Chapter 401. However, when Zhao Wensheng and Zhou Xiaoduo's fists met, Zhao Wensheng immediately felt that something was wrong. His opponent's strength was surging towards him like an avalanche. Zhao Wensheng's knuckles made a crisp cracking sound and a piercing pain quickly attacked him. Zhao Wensheng knew that something was wrong and hurriedly retreated. Just as he leaned back, an unbearable pain came from his crotch area. Ow! Ah! Zhao Wensheng had just called out, but he forcefully held it back. However, cold sweat suddenly appeared on his forehead. His whole body was bent and he almost knelt on the ground. Zhou Xiaoduo was slightly surprised and stared blankly for a moment. He didn't deliberately kick Zhao Wensheng's crotch. His goal was to kick Zhao Wensheng's lower abdomen. He wanted to kick Zhao Wensheng out and decide the winner. However, when Zhao Wensheng leaned back and retreated, the kick to his lower abdomen accidentally hit a vital point. Steers. The black-faced boy loudly said, "Zhou Xiaoduo wins. Come up and eat." Then he turned around and walked back to his table to eat. Zhao Wensheng raised his hand and saw that his fist was dripping with blood. His knuckles had already sunk in. It was obvious that his injury wasn't light. He gritted his teeth and snorted, "You win. I'll eat standing." After eating 2 pills, he clutched his stomach and staggered up the stairs. "Not bad." Zhou Xiaoduo cupped his fists. "Thank you for letting me win." This Zhao Wensheng was really a man. He had an unyielding spirit. Ever since Zhou Xiaoduo's kick, that kick appeared in the world, basically everyone who was hit by it would fall to the ground the moment they were hit. Their hands would cover the area where they were hit. There were very few exceptions. However, not only did Zhao Wensheng not fall to the ground, he was actually barely able to stand. If it wasn't for the black-faced boy announcing the winner, he would probably have fiercely counterattacked and continued to fight with Zhou Xiaoduo. He wouldn't have given up just because of a momentary slip. The combat quality of the Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts students was very high. Zhou Xiaoduo had seen through this, which was why he said "not bad." He wasn't speaking without thinking. The two of them went upstairs one after another. After Zhao Wensheng's pain subsided a little, he took his bowl of rice and walked to Zhou Xiaoduo's table. He stood up straight and started eating. And he wasn't the only one. A few of his classmates also carried their own food and stood in a row with him, eating while standing. However, the people present were not surprised and were used to it. In the Hidden Dragon High Martial School, this kind of thing happened every day. There were many people, but there were few tables. If one wanted to eat quickly, they would directly use force to snatch a table. If they managed to snatch it, they would sit down and eat. If they lost, they would stand behind the winner and eat. If your companions are willing to be punished with you, then they can stand and eat together. If they don't want to be punished with you, then it doesn't matter. The fact that martial artists had to strive was something that could be said to be vividly expressed in any aspect of the Hidden Dragon Martial School. The 5 people who were eating while standing all had fire in their eyes. They could only watch as the competitors sat down and ate. They were gnashing their teeth, but there was nothing they could do. Xiangbing explained to Zhou Xiaoduo while eating. Fighting over tables is very normal in the Hidden Dragon Martial School. It's very common. You must never let people sit down and eat, and also don't let other people sit down and eat. This is the rule. This is also the code of brotherhood. There are many every day, but it's inevitable that there will be revenge later. If martial artists don't even have this little bit of anger, then they don't need to live. Class monitors with your personality. It's better for you to train hard. Otherwise, I'm afraid that in the 4 years of the Hidden Dragon Martial School, you will spend most of your meal time standing. Zhou Xiaoduo was stunned. What do you mean? It mainly depends on who you hit. Usually, when a new student hits a senior, the senior students of the entire grade will feel uncomfortable. Take Zhao Wensheng, for example. He's from the 2nd grade's class 7. After today, I'm afraid that from time to time, the people from class 7 will come and fight over tables with you. If you can't beat them, then it depends on how long they want you to stand. If you meet those who seek revenge for the smallest grievance, they will come and fight for every meal. According to the rules, even if they come and fight for every meal, it's still allowed. The winner is respected, and the loser is humiliated. That's why I said that in these 4 years, you will have to spend most of your meal time standing. A sympathetic expression appeared on Xiangbing's face. Duo snorted and said, I thought it was something. If you have the ability, then come and fight me. If the student you hit has a lot of means, power or background, even if his class can't beat you, the class above him will make a move. So on and so forth. But if you have the ability, you can always fight back. Once you beat the senior students of the entire grade, no one will bother you anymore. Xiangbing explained. Of course, this is the worst-case scenario. It has never happened before. Duo nodded and couldn't help but praise. That's a good rule. In the future, when I come to this cafeteria, I will never have to worry about not having a table to eat. Other than Li Chenglong, everyone else was dumbfounded and speechless for a long time. Behind them, Zhao Wenxing's hand was dripping with blood. He said, Duo, I admit defeat because I'm not as good as you. But my 4 classmates lost face with me. It's my fault. I will find someone to get back at them. Duo chuckled and said, anytime. But to be honest, I admire you and your classmates. Just this spirit of brotherhood is worth a toast. The girl said angrily, it's too late to flatter now. We have to get back at you. We have to get your table back. Anytime. Duo finished his meal as fast as he could. He poured the last half a bowl of rice directly into his mouth and laughed. You are welcome to trouble me tomorrow. After saying that, he stood up and walked away at lightning speed. Xiangchong and Li Chenglong's eyes were filled with admiration and pride. Duo could have sat down and eaten slowly. He could even eat until nighttime. According to the rules, Zhao Wensheng and the others would have to stand with him until then. However, the other party had lost and had to stand to eat with his friends. Duo finished his meal as fast as he could and left. He ate really fast. Xiangbing and the others had only finished a third of their food. He walked even faster and disappeared in a flash. According to the rules, as long as Duo left, Zhao Wensheng and the others could sit down and finish the rest of the meal in peace. Although he didn't say anything, it was a kind of demeanor in itself. Anyone could see and understand. The young man who looked like a black iron tower at the next table looked at Duo disappearing in a flash. His eyes were filled with admiration and he said, Duo, not bad. When Duo walked out of the dining hall, he heard someone calling out to him. He turned around and saw Wu Yunhai walking over with a big smile. He gave him a thumbs up and said, as expected of the champion of this year's Longhu List tournament, you're really good. You can fight against someone of a higher level and win without breaking a sweat. I admire you. Senior brother Wu, you're too polite. Duo said lightly. I didn't come here for any other reason than to get to know junior brothers Wu. I'm Wu Yunhai from Fenghai City's Wu family. Wu Yunhai smiled and said, in addition, the family head has solemnly instructed me to pass you a message of apology when I see you. In the life and death arena, one is responsible for one's own life and death. Previously, Yuntian was too overbearing. In the end, it was our Wu family's fault for not restraining him well. I hope junior brothers won't take it to heart. Looking at Wu Yunhai's smile, face and aura, Duo sensed that something was not right. Or rather, something was not right. However, the Wu Yunhai in front of him did not have any hostile intentions. This could be clearly seen from his facial features. Even his aura showed that he genuinely wanted to get close to Zhu Yuntian. This discovery caused Duo to be alarmed. He had killed Wu Yuntian in front of so many people. Wu Yuntian had been beaten to the point that not even his bones remained. It was the most miserable way to die. And now, the Wu family was not only looking for trouble, but also protecting him? Sending their disciples to make friends with him? This was the magnanimity of a big family. A smile that could wipe away all enmity. Was the Wu family really so magnanimous? An inexperienced young man might believe it. Besides, he was also eager to bury the hatchet with the Wu family. After all, he had just arrived at Fenghai City and was unfamiliar with the place. The Wu family was a local tyrant. It was better to avoid trouble if possible. Since the other party had extended an olive branch, why not accept it? What if it could really wipe away all enmity with a smile? But Duo would never believe it. How could Duo believe this sudden kindness? Not to mention the good intentions of his enemy's family, even if it was the good intentions of a complete stranger. Even if it was the good intentions of someone he wasn't very familiar with, Zhuo Duo would still be extremely vigilant. This old scoundrel asked himself, if I were the head of the Wu family, and the child I had painstakingly raised was killed in the life and death arena, would I admit it? Because there was a rule on the continent. In the life and death arena, the winner and loser would be responsible for their own lives. Once in the life and death arena, all enmity would be over. Would I follow the rules of the continent? Fuck off. Whoever kills my son, I'll take the lives of his entire family. What rules are there to follow? Thinking of this, Zhuo Duo felt relieved. Even a magnanimous person like me would take revenge. How could the Wu family not take revenge on me? Now this sudden kindness. I'm afraid it's a trap to numb me. Your family head is really considerate. Zhuo's face was full of sincerity as he sighed emotionally. I'm also very regretful about the life and death arena. But at that time it was a life and death situation. There was really no other way. Zhuo Duo sighed faintly and said with a face full of regret, in fact, your brother. Although his speech and behavior were a little domineering, he was still a straightforward man. If he didn't die, he would have made friends. What a pity. Wu Yunhai laughed in his heart. You don't know how vengeful Wu Yuntian is. You actually want to make friends. You think too much, right? These people from small places really don't know how sinister people are. 7th and 6th. Monthly votes, recommendation votes, subscriptions. Chapter 402. That day, when life and death were determined, it was too late for me to regret it. Zhuo Duo sighed, as if he was truly regretting it. He said with all his heart, to be honest, senior brother Wu, before I came to Fenghai, my biggest worry was the Wu family's evil intentions. But after hearing what you said today, my heart is at ease again. I really didn't expect the Wu family to be so magnanimous. I'm really overjoyed. He held Wu Yunhai's hand and shook it again and again. He said respectfully, Senior brother Wu, please go back and report to your family's old master that I, Zhuo Duo, am deeply grateful. I hope from the bottom of my heart that I can bury the hatchet with the Wu family. When the time is right, I will pay a visit and thank the old master for his kindness. Wu Yunhai laughed heartily and said, there's no need to thank me. But the Wu family is always looking forward to Junior Brothers Wu's visit. He sighed softly and said, actually, we were also thinking about what we should do if Junior Brothers Wu enters the Hidden Dragon High School. How should we face him? To be honest, although we don't really understand the old master's order, we are also relieved. After all, in this world it's better to have more friends than enemies. Wu Yunhai's feelings were also very sincere. He said, in the future, if you have any problems in the Hidden Dragon High School, don't hesitate to look for me. Even if I can't solve it, I will definitely mediate for you. He patted Zhuo's shoulder and laughed. After all, there are many people watching you now. If something really happens to you, the first suspect will be the Wu family, ha ha ha. He was joking enthusiastically and didn't mean anything else. However, the speaker didn't mean it, but the listener took it seriously. Zhuo Duo rolled his eyes. His mind was already filled with 700 to 800 ideas. He laughed and said, that's right, that's right. Wu Yunhai clearly wanted to be friends with Zhuo Duo. His feelings were very sincere and he didn't hide anything. However, as for Zhuo Duo's thoughts, it was a matter of opinion. Haha, you don't know, but the matter of the life and death arena back then caused a huge commotion in our family. My fourth uncle, who is Wu Yuntian's father, was furious, and the old master was also furious. Haha. However, it seemed that the old man's attitude changed drastically after he received a phone call, and he immediately issued a ban. Otherwise, we might not be able to become friends today. Who knows, we might even be the ones fighting today. Wu Yunhai said joyfully. Zhuo Duo looked at Wu Yunhai and wondered if this guy was really brainless. How could he say such a thing? There was a lot of information in there. This was too. Ha 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 ha. Zhuo Duo laughed along. He seemed to be the same as Wu Yunhai, the type that was heartless. Sea of clouds? Why are you here? Hey, isn't that Zhuo Duo? At this moment, two young men walked over from the other side. The moment they saw him, they were pleasantly surprised and walked over. Junior Wu, I've heard a lot about you. One of them said emotionally. You and Yunhai seem to be chatting happily. Wu Yunhai snorted and said, if you want to befriend Junior Brothers Wu, Go ahead. There's no need to use me as a shield. It's not like I haven't seen the hysterical behavior of the Gao clan before. The two young men's faces immediately darkened. One of them said angrily, "My sister was killed. Can't I be angry? To put it bluntly, I'm still angry when I see Zhuo Duo. But my family doesn't allow me to do anything about it." Zhuo's eyes lit up. Hey, this guy's personality is quite interesting. The other one frowned and said, "Third brother, how can you say that?" The one who spoke in front was speechless. The person in front had a three-clawed golden dragon on his chest. He sighed softly and looked at Zhuo Duo. "Junior Zhuo, I'm Gao Chengxiang. This is my younger brother, Gao Chengyun. Gao Yin or Gao Pinger in the life and death arena is our sister and cousin." Zhuo Duo said, To be honest, I don't want to meet you face to face, and I don't want to be friends with you either. But during this time we've been tied together by fate." Gao Chengxiang sighed softly. "Because nothing can happen to you. If something happens to you, our family will be the biggest suspect, just like the Wu family. So in the next period of time, let's get closer to each other." Zhuo Duo smiled honestly. "Thank you very much. I'm really ashamed that the Gao family is so righteous." Gao Chengxiang sighed softly and said somewhat helplessly, "What do you mean by righteous? You're a smart person. You can't not understand our feelings. I'm not afraid to tell you that I'm very uncomfortable with interacting with you more. But it can't be helped. This is the family's decision. Junior Zhuo, I just hope that you're not that kind of annoying person. Otherwise, I'll feel wronged for our family's good intentions." That won't happen, Zhuo Duo said sternly. "The enmity has already been formed. It's just karma entanglement. I don't have much hope for the so-called turning weapons of war into gifts of jade and silk. I just hope that we can live in harmony. That's my optimistic wish." He put on a sincere attitude and said, "Seniors, since you've already said so, it's enough to show that you're upright. If I say anything else, it'll only be awkward. It's just that at the life and death arena, I was like an arrow on the bow. I had no choice but to release it. Now that I'm talking about this, how can I not cry?" Zhuo Duo looked up at the sky and sighed. His face was full of sorrow. At that time, the life and death arena was broadcasted live on the internet. It was Wu Yuntian who forced both sides to sign the agreement. The whole world could bear witness to this. It was not something that could be erased with just one family's words. Zhuo's sigh lingered in the air. Lingering in the air. He said sincerely, just as Senior Gao Chengxiang said, "I don't dare to hope to become true friends with you seniors. But in this deceitful society, when we need to support each other, we have to cooperate. No matter what, we can't let others take advantage of this loophole and sow discord between us. Seniors, please go back and tell your elders that I've received your family's kindness and sincerity. But when I have time, I'll definitely pay you a visit and apologize in person." "Junior Zhuo, you're exaggerating." Gao Chengxiang sighed softly. "You can't do what you want in the martial world. We're angry about what happened in the past. Even now we still have resentment. But we've seen the truth with our own eyes. We understand Junior Zhuo's situation from the bottom of our hearts. After all, no one wants to die. It's all fate's fault." Gao Chengxiang looked up at the sky and sighed. In front of him, he seemed to see the smiling faces of his two cousins. Then he glared at Wu Yunhai. At the end of the day, Zhuo Duo, the murderer, had to bear a small part of the responsibility in the life and death arena battle. However, the other instigator, Wu Yuntian, was also guilty. It could even be said that it was reasonable to put all the blame on Wu Yuntian. If it wasn't for his aggressiveness, what happened later would have happened. If one looked deeper, it was all because of the Wu family's lax upbringing that led to such an unfilial son. He was a burden to others and to themselves. What's more, why did he have to offend Zhuo Duo? If he wanted to fight to the death, he could have just found someone weaker to kill. But he had to find Zhuo Duo. Not only did he get himself killed, even his two cousins were killed. Wu Yunhai sighed and said indifferently, "You guys talk. I'll be leaving first." He said goodbye to Zhuo Duo and left his contact information. Then he turned around and left. Wu Yunhai was also sighing in his heart. Zhuo Duo was not the only one who was implicated in the life and death arena. The Wu clan and the Gao clan were both famous clans in Fenghai City. The two clans had a close relationship for decades. But after this incident, it was not far from breaking off. The Wu family's Wu Yuntian was arrogant and proud. He didn't pay much attention to his other brothers. His relationship with his family was average. However, the two beauties of the Gao family were the hearts of the entire family. Now, when the young people of the two families met, there was no one who didn't raise their eyebrows. There were many young people of the Wu family and the Gao family in the Hidden Dragon High School. During this time there had been dozens of open and secret fights inside and outside the school, and he had seen blood in battle no less than a dozen times. The young people of the two families liked to stick together. Wherever you go, I'll go. I'm there to look for trouble. They could start a fight with just one look. Now, several nightclubs in Fenghai City had been closed by the young people of the two families. Gao Chengxiang and Gao Chengyun were obviously depressed. After exchanging contact information with Zuoxiao Duo, they also turned around and left gloomily. Along the way they whispered and sighed softly. It was obvious that their stomachs were full of complaints. Just as they said, coming to get to know Zuoxiao Duo was a request from their families. It was not that they personally thought that Zuoxiao Duo was a good person. Even if there was a reason behind it, no one would think that Zuoxiao Duo deserved to kill his sister. He really had nowhere to vent his anger. Gao Chengxiang looked gloomy and said, "Check where the Wu family is going tonight. We'll go too." Okay. Looking at the three people leaving, Zuoxiao's face was full of smiles, sadness, and frustration. He seemed to be very sentimental. He looked up at the sky and sighed, "What is this?" Then he also left with a heavy heart. On the way back, Zuoxiao Duo walked very slowly. He was analyzing the three people's words inch by inch. From their expressions, talking, and revealing their true feelings, he thought back and judged that Zuoxiao Duo came to a conclusion. These three people didn't seem to be pretending. They were all sincere. This meant that they really came to meet him. They really didn't want to help him at all. But because of the family's order, they had to pinch their noses and help him. That was basically what they were thinking. But what was the reason? According to Zuoxiao's sinister personality, he would definitely not think on the bright side and think for everyone's sake. He would only habitually consider and think in the worst direction. There must be a conspiracy. Zuoxiao Duo immediately came to a conclusion. Chapter 403. In this situation, there are only two possibilities. The first possibility is that the two families are under great pressure. Someone with a high status is pressuring me, putting my safety on the same scale as their family's survival. That's why they're doing this. First, they're showing kindness to me to the greatest extent to dissolve the knot in my heart. The second possibility is that they want to kill me. They're already plotting, but they didn't tell the young people in the family. They're using the young people's impulsiveness to pass me false information. They're even using this to create an illusion to create an atmosphere for future attacks and get rid of suspicion. But no matter which one it is, they'll kill me sooner or later. Turning hostility into friendship is a joke. Zuoxiao Duo walked with a melancholy expression on his face, as if he was really depressed, regretful, and troubled. But in his heart, countless thoughts flashed through his mind in the blink of an eye. I'll discuss it with Swollen tonight. This situation is very different from what I predicted before I came. It's completely inconsistent. Two heads are better than one. We need to brainstorm and come up with a countermeasure. As he walked forward, Li Chenglong, Xiangbing, and Xiangchong caught up with him from behind. Zua. Yes, finished eating. There should still be a group battle in the afternoon, right? Li Chenglong said, glancing at Xiangbing as he spoke. Xiangbing didn't want to be outdone. She glared back. Yes, Teacher Wen is still trying to figure us out. This battle should continue until Teacher Wen confirms that he knows the ins and outs of each of us, right? Zuoxiao Duo grinned and said, in addition to continuing to figure us out in the afternoon, he should continue to be sharp-tongued. Especially after this meal, I think many people will forget something. There will definitely be a good show in the afternoon. Hearing this, Xiangchong and Xiangbing's faces turned pale. This was especially true for Xiangbing, who was a carefree girl. After eating this meal, her mood had already soared. Her heart was filled with the glory of winning the table. She really forgot the nightmare in the morning class and was still excited at the moment. After hearing Zhou Xiaoduo's words, she couldn't help but feel nervous. Luckily, Zhou reminded him that Xiang Bing glanced at him gratefully and hurriedly reviewed the scolding, beating, and mistakes she had made in the morning. This was a big deal. At this moment, an old woman walked towards them. She had a head full of silver hair and her entire body was filled with a gloomy aura. She was as thin as firewood and her eyes were gloomy. She looked like an evil spirit that had walked out of hell. Wherever he passed, the surrounding students, even those who were not close to him, could not help but take a step back. The aura that flowed from this person's body made people and ghosts stay away. Xiang Chong and Xiang Bing stood still and greeted respectfully. "Greetings, Granny Yu." The old woman rolled her eyes and said eerily, "Call me Granny sure." This voice was like a gust of cold wind that came from the depths of hell. When people heard this, they really couldn't help but shudder. They shuddered, goosebumps all over their bodies, and their hair almost stood up. "Hello, Grandma Sure." Xiang Bing and Xiang Chong hurriedly changed their greetings. Their faces were pale. It was obvious that they were very afraid of the person in front of them. This Granny Sure stood in front of the four people. Her body was frighteningly thin, as if a gust of wind could blow her away. Her pair of flickering eyes looked at Zhou Xiaoduo and said, "You're Zhou Xiaoduo?" Zhou Xiaoduo was stunned and said, "That's me." "Hello, Granny Sure." "Come with me. I want to ask you something," Granny Sure said lightly. As she spoke, she walked forward, not giving Zhou Xiaoduo a chance to hesitate and refuse. "Sister-in-law, why are you here?" When Xingtian's figure suddenly appeared. He chuckled and said, "Why are you here? Haha, are you looking for Xiaoduo? Sister-in-law, if there's anything, why don't you tell me directly? I promise to do it properly. What can a little kid do?" "Get out of my way." Granny Sure said eerily, "What? I'm looking for your disciple, and you're jumping out and interfering? Don't worry, I won't beat your baby to death." When Xingtian looked embarrassed and said, "Zhou Xiaoduo is new here. He's not familiar with many things. Sister-in-law, you—" "I said, get out of my way." Granny Sure sneered and said, "You're really a good teacher to love your disciple so much. However, when Xingtian, your brother has been framed for so many years. Where are you when Xingtian?" When Xingtian's face was pale, he said softly, "Sister-in-law, we've always been working hard. When have we ever slacked off?" "He, working hard, never slacking off? What's the use of letting your brother sink to the bottom of the sea?" Granny Sure's eyes flashed with a ruthless light. She said word by word, "Are you going to get out of my way?" When Xingtian hesitated for a moment, he stepped aside and said softly, "Sister-in-law, there's something wrong with this kid's brain. He'll talk nonsense from time to time. If he offended you in any way, please be magnanimous." Granny Sure laughed eerily. Her white hair fluttered in the wind as she walked away. When Xingtian looked at Zhou Xiaoduo with a complicated gaze, he said softly, "Go, you have to talk to your Granny Sure properly." "Okay." Zhou Xiaoduo agreed and followed Granny Sure. On the other side, when Xingtian turned his head and looked at their backs, he sighed and said, "Go back and train by yourself. Continue to fight." As soon as he finished speaking, his body moved and disappeared without a trace. When Xingtian appeared in the headmaster's office in less than 2 seconds, "Headmaster, Mrs. Sure took Zhou Xiaoduo with her." Yi Chongqing was stunned when he heard that. Then he stood up abruptly. His expression was extremely complicated. Why did she look for Zhou Xiaoduo?" "I don't know." When Xingtian said, "I didn't stop her. Mainly because I didn't dare to." "Headmaster, if you have time." Yi Chongqing's expression kept changing. He sighed deeply. "You didn't dare to stop her, but I did?" Yunfeng was framed back then. Who didn't know? For so many years we couldn't find the murderer. How can we face Mrs. Sure? When Xingtian looked gloomy, "Yes, I feel guilty about this. I really don't have the face to face her. I feel guilty too. Every year on Yunfeng's death anniversary, I don't have the face to see him." Yi Chongqing stood up heavily and sighed. "Forget it. I'll go and take a look." Zhou Xiaoduo followed Grandma Sure for a few steps. Suddenly, he felt his body become light. Grandma Sure had already grabbed him and lifted him into the air. He only felt dazzled. After a series of changes in the air, He had already left the Hidden Dragon High School and arrived at a small courtyard. It was a very dilapidated courtyard. The courtyard was full of weeds. It was unknown how many years it had been since the place was cleaned up. The weeds were as tall as a person. It was a mess. There was only one stone path, which was buried in the weeds. With a creak, Grandmusher pushed open the courtyard door and walked in with Swishaoduo. The door opened. What greeted them was a huge picture that took up an entire wall. It was an old man with a square face, sword-like eyebrows, and a short beard. The old man was sitting on a chair with one hand on the hilt of his sword. The long sword in his hand was cold. The light in his eyes seemed to be projecting out from the picture and shining directly on Swishaoduo's face. The aura of righteousness and grandeur that hit him in the face hit him in the face. It was a living room. There were 2 sofas, a coffee table, and a few benches. It was neat, clean, and spotless. It was like a different world compared to the desolation outside. It was as if this small and clean place was the only thing left in the entire human world. The mortal world outside was just a pile of weeds. There was no need to care about it. Swishaoduo suddenly felt uncomfortable. Back then, Shi Yunfeng was the vice principal of the Hidden Dragon High School. He was cautious and conscientious all his life. Grandma Shi was also an excellent teacher who taught and educated people all her life. She had sent many talents to this human continent. She was full of heart and soul, wholeheartedly defending this continent of astral souls. She racked her brains and worked her heart out. However, in this cruel world, a vice principal was framed and forced to death. It made Grandma Shi, a high martial arts teacher who was passionate about teaching and educating people, feel so desolate in her heart. Her hot-blooded heart was completely cold. Her wholehearted heart turned into ice and snow. There was a couplet on both sides of the picture. It was obviously written by Grandma Shi herself. The first couplet was, "Loyal heart and righteous blood. A gentleman should stay in the netherworld." The second couplet was, "Iron horse and ice river. The human world is not worth it." Swishaoduo sighed in his heart. He felt inexplicably depressed and sorrowful. Loyal heart and righteous blood go to heaven because the human world is not worth it. How disheartened and disheartened was this? How cold and despairing was this? On the 4 walls, there were numerous military medals and commendations displayed in front of him. There were more than a dozen tables on the left that filled up the rest of the space. There were letters all over the table, one after another. Every single one of them was opened. Grandma Shi came into the room and put down Swishaoduo. She looked up at the huge picture and said softly, "Old man, I'm home. Wait for a moment. I have something to do first. I'll go and cook. After I'm done, I'll warm the wine for you." She spoke as if the husband was still alive and the wife had gone out to buy groceries. It was a conversation that couldn't be more normal. The person in front of her didn't seem to be a picture, but a living person. Swishaoduo couldn't help but feel a lump in his throat. He stood in front of the huge picture and bowed deeply. The heroic spirit is always here. Swishaoduo. Grandma Shi turned her head and looked at Swishaoduo. Seeing him bow, there was finally a trace of warmth in her eyes. She said, "Do you know who I am? Do you know where this is?" Swishaoduo said respectfully, "You are Grandma Shi, the wife of Vice Principal Shi Yunfeng. This is Vice Principal Shi's home." Grandma Shi smiled faintly. "I didn't expect a new student to know about Vice Principal Shi. You must have done a lot of homework." Swishaoduo said with emotion, "Vice Principal Shi is a first-class figure in the world. He's a great man with a loyal heart and a man of steel. Although I'm a junior, I've heard of such a heroic figure." Grandma Shi's eyes flashed with a strange light. She said, "Don't you think that Vice Principal Shi is a debauchee with a corrupt character?" Chapter 404. Swishaoduo shook his head and said, "Grandma Shi, you must be joking. If Principal Shi liked beauties, how could those lowly girls have a chance? There would be many noble ladies who would offer themselves to him." Grandma Shi was stunned. Suddenly, she raised her head and laughed loudly. However, as she laughed, tears rolled down her cheeks again. Back then, the entire country condemned him in speech and in writing. The people were furious like a hurricane raging in the sea. Thousands of people pointed at him, but very few people wanted to go one step further. She turned her head and said sternly, "That's right. My old Sure was at the returning mysterious realm and held a high position. He was upright for many years. He had students all over the world and the garden was full of fragrance. If my old Sure liked beauties, there would be many people who would rush to his door. How could those filthy lowly girls have a chance? It's just that the eyes of the people are all blind." "Are they really all blind?" Grandma Sure asked sternly, her expression sorrowful and indignant. "The world is full of dirty water. The people are furious. The abuse is like the tide and the contempt is like the sea. But no one thought about it. With my old Sure's status, why would he look for ordinary prostitutes? Are they even worthy? 1,000 years of fame, a proud character. Students all over the world, 100 battles on the battlefield." Grandma Sure laughed bitterly. Even if he had a good reputation, he still couldn't win against the repeated criticism of the people. He couldn't win against the accumulated destruction. He worked his heart and soul to cultivate countless famous generals for thousands of years. He galloped on the battlefield and protected the country and the people. In the end, the people he protected all his life forced him to have nowhere to live in this world. Even if he killed the enemy on the battlefield, he had to hide his name and not show his face. Even if he died on the battlefield, he still couldn't wash away the stain on his name. In this world, what is worth protecting? It's been more than 20 years since his death. But the abuse on the internet has never stopped. With a network cable and a few fingers, he can do whatever he wants and distort the truth. Grandma Sure laughed bitterly. A cloud transformation expert can already slaughter a city. A returning mysterious realm expert wants to find ordinary prostitutes to relieve his lust? Ha ha ha. How can you believe such a big joke? However, the 10 billion people only see the powerful principal having fun. They turn a blind eye to everything else. Those who think they are righteous will take advantage of this and insult them for decades. Immoral, refined scum. Unworthy of being a teacher, misleading students, thieves, prostitutes, deranged. When these comments covered the sky and covered the earth, this old woman realized that even a returnant's profound expert who was already at the peak of the clouds couldn't bear it. Grandma Sure's face was filled with sorrow. She was scolding and complaining, but there was no anger on her face, only sorrow. His heart was filled with sorrow. The human world is not worth it. The human world was not worth it. The human world is not worth it. Grandma Sure sighed softly. Swishaoduo stood in silence for a long time before he said slowly, "Grandma Sure, this world has never been as bright as we hoped. This is a filthy world to begin with. As the saying goes, the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. It seems to be full of positive energy, but no one thinks of the extra layer. You bear so many responsibilities and give so much, but the people you protect betray you in the end. What should you do? Is it really right to resign ourselves to death and end everything with our own hands?" Grandma Sure was startled when she heard this, but then she laughed loudly. "If old Sure had the awareness of a child like you, how could he be forced to death? Old Sure, you can't even live as thoroughly as a child." Granny Sure looked up to the sky and exhaled. She said indifferently, "Everything in this room is the letters that Sure Yunfeng has received from his students all these years. None of the students that he has taught have ever believed that their teacher would be that kind of person. Even though old Sure has been gone for a long time, his students still keep writing to him, reporting their situation. Some of the things that they encountered, some of the difficulties, some of the puzzles are just like before. The students always believe that their beloved teacher can solve their problems. Every time we get a military medal, we will send it to old Sure to tell him that his efforts were not in vain. His students will always believe in him. The students are accumulating their own merits little by little, using their monstrous merits to clear old Sure's name. Many of the letters in here have become relics. Many students died on the battlefield, but they didn't have anything to commemorate them with. Many of their family members came here. I found the students' letters for them and brought them home, becoming their last memento." Grandma Sure smiled bitterly. "The children are all good children, all good children. It's a pity, a pity." Zhuoxiaoduo sighed softly. Looking at the portrait, looking at the pair of bright eyes under Principal Sure's sword-like eyebrows, he only felt that his heart was unusually heavy. It was so heavy that his heart felt as if it was going to explode. All these years I read the letters for Old Sure every night. This was Old Sure's favorite thing to do when he was still alive. He would make a cup of tea and then quietly read the students' letters in the study room. Sometimes, when the military medals came with the letters, he would be happy and call me out to cook a few dishes and boil a pot of good wine. So now, every night, I have to read a few letters for him, boil a pot of good wine, and cook a few dishes for him. What he is most happy about, most worried about, and most concerned about are these children. I haven't died. Even if I am scolded in the face when I go out, I won't die. I want to live. I want to live to see the day when the injustice is redressed. I want to see the murderer and kill the murderer with my own hands. Otherwise, if I die, I can't bring the news here. Old Sure will continue to be aggrieved. A person can be aggrieved to death, but as a ghost, we can't be aggrieved anymore. It's said that justice and justice may be late, but it definitely won't be absent. I will take it as true and wait for the day when I'm not absent. The real murderer is just a life and death battle. They have benefits to seek, and I hate their despicable methods. But in a life and death battle with the addition of a white blade, one can't live under the same sky. I don't feel aggrieved. But I feel aggrieved. Those people whom I can't do anything to. Those so-called ordinary people who don't know the truth. With the slightest instigation, the world will be pointed at by thousands of people, and the world will be full of curses. Grandma Sure said calmly, I once thought that when the injustice is redressed, I will do my best to massacre 10 cities and bury them with my husband and me. But now that I think about it, even if this wish comes true, what's the point? If Old Sure knew in the underworld, he would definitely not agree. He used his whole life, his heart's blood, and his life to protect everything on this continent. How could he allow me to carry out such a crazy massacre? Grandma Sure trembled and tears streamed down her face. But I really don't feel happy in my heart. Those people who may have been used or incited to scold others. Can they shirk all their crimes just by saying that they don't know the truth and that they are not guilty? When the time comes to redress the grievances, do you think you can write off all the sins of the past with a simple sorry? Duo could only remain silent towards this sharp question. This question had been an unsolvable question since ancient times. Since ancient times, there had been too many foolish people. When the hero who protected the country was framed by a treacherous official and beheaded in public, the countless people who were protected by them all applauded and cheered loudly. Another corrupt official was killed, and the court and the commoners were cleared. When the generals who had been through hundreds of battles were framed and killed, many people who didn't know the truth scolded the rebels and ran around to spread the news. They were so excited that their faces were red, thinking that the borders were more secure and their livelihoods were more stable. When the heroes who had served the country and the people were defeated in the political battle and were torn apart in the city, there were still countless people who had tried their best to seek benefits for them. The scandals of the high-ranking people were always the eternal topics of the lower class. Who cared if you were wronged? Some people might say, what's wrong with me scolding you on the internet? If you have a clear conscience, what's the point? However, when there are people who want to manipulate the arrangement, a few words you casually say can become a drop in the monstrous waves that can crush people to death. Since ancient times, people's words were the most fearful. How could they be false? As the saying goes, if you are condemned by thousands of people, you will die without a disease. The room was quiet. Grandma Sure quietly gasped for breath for a long time. After a while she said, I invited you here today for a reason. Duo said, Grandma Sure, please say. Duo will definitely not refuse to help if it is within my power. Grandma Sure was silent for a while and said, a few days ago, the 5 Swords Qin Fangyang, who was known as one of the top 10 fugitives of the Eastern Army, came to see me. Teacher Qin. Duo's eyes lit up. May I ask Grandma Sure, where is he now and where is he going? I don't know. Grandma Sure said, Qin Fangyang is much younger than us, but in terms of reputation, he is still Old Sure's senior. 70 or 80 years ago, he was already one of the top 10 fugitives. And Old Sure, it was only 20 years ago for a short period of time in that last battle. Duo coughed and didn't answer. He thought to himself, Teacher Qin is really awesome. At that time, his cultivation was not even at the cloud transformation realm, but he was actually able to make such a name for himself on the battlefield. It is enough to show that he is blessed by the heavens and has the luck of a main character in a novel. Qin Fengyang made a special trip here to tell me that he has taken in a disciple called Zuoxiao Duo, and that he will be coming to study at the Hidden Dragon High School soon. However, it is not that he wants me to take care of him, but he said that this Zuoxiao Duo is not only proficient in the art of qi observation, but also has the supernatural power of divination. He can predict life and death, and is especially good at observing the fate of people. There is nothing wrong with his predictions. If I have something and really don't have a clue, perhaps I can use this Zuoxiao Duo to find another way, or find my way home. Grandma Sher's pair of withered and sunken eyes stared fixedly at Zuoxiao Duo as she said, "That's why I invited you here today for this purpose." Chapter 405. She slowly closed her eyes and muttered, "I really want to know how long it will take for me to clear my name. I've stayed long enough in this world. If I can, I don't want to stay in this dirty world for even a second longer." Zuoxiao's heart trembled. From Grandma Sher's hateful tone, he could tell that she was so tired of the world that she and her husband had loved and protected for their entire lives. She hated it so much that she couldn't wait to leave. If it weren't for the hope of clearing her name, she might have killed herself long ago and chased after her late husband. Zuoxiao Duo sighed deeply, raised his eyes and stared at Grandma Sher's face. It was a face full of wrinkles without any luster or blood, like a mummy. There were layers of fog and haze. Although there was a blue sky, it was far and high. Zuoxiao Duo tried to use his luck points, but there was still no effect. It seemed that this Grandma Sher was also a super expert. "Grandma Sher, please write a word." "Let me see," Zuoxiao Duo said in a deep voice. Grandma Sher took a deep breath and turned to look at her husband's portrait. The expression in her eyes changed and slowly turned into tenderness. It was because of him that she was bound by the mortal world, suffered bitterly, and spent her life, but she still had no regrets. "June, are you okay in the netherworld?" She sighed softly. She wrote a word. "Feng." That was Principal Sher's name. Zuoxiao Duo looked carefully and muttered, "This is a mountain with the tip of a blade. Countless people below are working hard to break the blade and reach the peak." But Zuoxiao's face showed disappointment. He didn't say what he wanted to say after that, because the blade was in the middle and he couldn't go. If he went, he wouldn't be able to become a Feng. From here to there, but because the two ends couldn't reach the shore, it became neither this nor that, and there was no chance of survival. Grandma Sher, Feng means the same peak and also the same blade. The meaning of the peak of the mountain is also the peak of the blade. Feng and Feng have the same meaning. The mountain comes from the left, and there are plentiful harvests under the blade. Plentiful as in plentiful harvests. This is to show that Principal Sher's 1,000 years of hard work in teaching has brought about a bountiful harvest of students. And now, the strength of all the students is fighting against the blade above their heads. Plum blossoms and peach blossoms don't speak of their own path. You reap what you sow, you reap what you sow, you reap what you sow. Even if the song is high and few, the garden is still full of melons and beans. The wind cannot be broken. But when it turns to the left of the mountain, it is still a peak. When the tip of the saber ascends higher, when there is no longer a mountain pressing down on the top, it can merge with the power below and become the Feng sound. It is still the Feng sound. It's hard to get rid of injustice, and it's hard to shift the edge of a blade. We can only wait for the wind to blow and the mountain to fall. Only then can we see a clear sky. Zuoxiao Duo frowned deeply. He said, "Peak and Feng, there is no distinction between upper and lower case. They can exist together. In other words, the truth of this matter is about to come to light. All we have to do is wait for someone to bring it up, and the injustice can be redressed." Yes, it was time to clear his name. But Zuoxiao Duo didn't say what the public's opinion would be. The haters connected to the internet wouldn't care whether you redressed his name or not. They would continue to spew whatever they wanted and scold whatever they wanted. It was still the same sentence. The law couldn't punish the masses. Even if the consequences were serious and appalling, those who didn't know were not guilty. The truth is about to come to light? However, this news was like a super bomb to Grandma Sher. It made her feel dizzy. This was good news that she had never heard before. For a moment her whole body trembled. Although she had been bitterly persevering, painstakingly waiting for the day when the injustice could be redressed, in fact, her heart had long been in despair. Just like what she said before, justice and fairness might be late, but it would not be absent. She would just take it as real and wait for the day when it would not be absent. She knew clearly how difficult it was to overturn this matter. For so many years, Yi Chongqing dragged his sick body and had been running around for these things, but it was to no avail. The angry protests of many students also didn't cause any splashes. Marshal Dongfang had almost checked all the families in Shangjing and Fenghai, but it was also in vain. He wanted to take revenge, but he couldn't find anyone to take revenge on. He wanted to risk his life, but he couldn't find anyone. How could he end this enmity? At this moment when she heard Zhuoxiaoduo's words, she was so surprised that she couldn't speak. Really? Grandma asked with a trembling voice. Really? Zhuoxiaoduo nodded his head in affirmation. His face was solemn, but in his heart he kept muttering. The divination was indeed like this, and the divination was also explained in this way. But this mountain is on the left. This left. You can't be referring to me, right? This matter is too big. With my small arms and legs now I probably can't carry it, right? But looking from the opposite side it was the right side. And the right side of Fenghai City was the direction Zhuoxiaoduo came from. The peak. The mountain was small and tall. This. Zhuoxiaoduo touched his head and muttered in his heart, I didn't drag myself into this big whirlpool because of a moment of righteous indignation, right? God has pity on me. Grandma trembled all over, her tears falling down. She muttered, Old man, did you hear that? I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. A sigh came from outside the door. Yi Chongqing's figure came to the door, and he said in a deep voice, Sister-in-law, we've been working hard. Old sure, we won't sink to the bottom of the sea for injustice. There will be a day when we can clear this injustice. Ha ha ha. Grandma said lightly. Thank you for your trouble. It's rare that Principal Yi, who is so busy every day, still remembers this small matter of the Han family. School affairs are busy, so please go back. Don't delay your great cause. Sister-in-law. Yi Chongqing's expression was complicated. I don't dare. Grandma didn't even lift her eyelids. Principal Yi, for you to suddenly come here, it's probably not to see this old woman, but because you're worried that this old woman will go crazy and kill your favorite disciple? Don't worry, this old woman was also a teacher of the Hidden Dragon High Martial School. Even if she's crazy, she won't harm the students. Principal Yi, you can rest assured. Yi Chongqing was extremely embarrassed, and said, Sister-in-law, you misunderstood. Grandma suddenly became furious and shouted, Don't you understand human language? This old woman is not your sister-in-law, get out. She took a step forward and pushed Yi Chongqing out with a palm. She scolded crazily, I don't want to see anyone from the Hidden Dragon High Martial School. Old also doesn't want to see you. Get out. Get out. Grandma roared furiously, and her voice was extremely mournful. Yi Chongqing sighed deeply, and he bowed deeply to Yunfeng's portrait outside the door, and muttered, Brother, I know you're anxious. We've been working hard, and we'll never give up. After saying that, he turned around and left, not daring to stay. Grandma chest heaved up and down violently, and her throat was panting like a bellows. Her face was red, and her eyes were filled with uncontrollable anger. You can go. Child, Grandma said softly. Today with your words I can still patiently wait for a few more years. Otherwise I really can't take it anymore. Grandma voice was extremely hoarse, as if these few words had exhausted all her remaining strength. Zhuoxiaoduo was silent for a moment, and then he stood up and said softly, If that's the case, I'll go back first. Grandma wait for 2 days when I've settled down in the school, and then I'll come to see you again. I admire Vice Principal and I also respect you. I'll do my best for this matter. Grandma nodded silently, and leaned against the big picture, and closed her eyes. Her face was full of fatigue. She was like a woman who had been wronged, and finally leaned into her husband's embrace. Zhuoxiaoduo left quietly, and only felt that his heart was about to explode. This was not the residence of Hidden Dragon No. 1 High School, but a relatively desolate place. There were not many people around, and it was a typical small courtyard in the countryside. After walking slowly for more than 10 meters, Swaxiaoduo stood at the intersection. Although he felt the wind coming from all directions, he felt even more oppressed. Two young men came from afar, and deliberately circled around, and came to the entrance of this small courtyard. One of them said, "Do you know? This is the house of the vice principal of Hidden Dragon No. 1 High School, who was caught for prostitution." Is it the vice principal sure who was caught in bed, and then his whereabouts are unknown? None of these officials are good. Such a beast. When he was the vice principal, I don't know how many female students he ruined. That's right, after that many people came out to clean up. Haha. What's the use? That's right, Hidden Dragon No. 1 High School can't afford to lose face. Fortunately, we don't have the talent to practice martial arts. If we entered such a school, As they were talking, the two of them walked past the entrance of the small courtyard, and turned their heads to spit at the same time. Bah! Slap! 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 Two loud slaps were heard. Swaxiaoduo, who had changed his clothes, stood in front of the two young men with a gloomy face. He pointed at his pants and said, "Are you blind? You spat on my pants." The two young men couldn't help but be dumbfounded. There was no one here just now, so how did their spit end up on someone else's pants? "I'm sorry. I really didn't pay attention just now." One of them hurriedly apologized. What's the use of saying sorry? Swaxiaoduo's face was that of a bully. He grabbed the guy's collar and lifted him up, then cursed, "Fuck your grandmother, you vomited all over me, and now you want to go after apologizing. Tell me, what should we do about this?" The two young men secretly cursed their bad luck. They had met a hooligan, and this was obviously extortion. The person who spat on you swallowed his anger and said, "I'm sorry, I'll pay." "You're willing to pay? Okay, my pants, 10,000 star dollars. Swaxiaoduo pointed at his pants and said evilly, "I love this donkey brand pants. Hurry up and pay. Take the money and be done with it." "What donkey? How can there be such expensive pants?" The two young men were furious. "You're extorting us." "Extorting? You're so poor, why would I be interested in extorting you? But who asked you to spit on my pants?" Swaxiaoduo slapped them again and again, and each slap landed on their mouths. "You made me unhappy and you still dare to talk back? Do you know what I'm doing now? I'm teaching you a lesson on behalf of your father. Remember, don't spit everywhere and spit shit everywhere." Chapter 406. Give me the money. Otherwise, I'll beat you up once a day. Swaxiaoduo began to search them without any explanation. After finding their ID, he snorted and said, "If you two have the guts, then run. This daddy has been in the underworld for many years. I will kill you." As he spoke, he dragged them forward. When they reached the intersection, he intentionally kicked a boulder that weighed a few hundred kilograms. The boulder rolled 7 to 8 times, making a loud noise. When the two saw this, their souls flew out of their bodies and they were both terrified. "Are you going to give me the money or not?" Swaxiaoduo was filled with an unrelenting aura, portraying the demeanor of a local ruffian vividly and vividly. The two young men were already crying. Their faces were full of tears. What kind of luck did they have today? They were blackmailed for 10,000 yuan just because they spat? They really didn't have that much money. They couldn't even get rid of this disaster. Were they going to be buried here? Forget it. Behind them at the door, Grandma Sure said with a tired face, "Let them go." Swaxiaoduo sneered, "Grandma, don't meddle in other people's business. These two bastards spouted shit and dirted my pants. I have to find them for an explanation. If they don't pay for my pants, I won't let them off. 10,000 yuan, not a cent less." The two young men cried, "You're obviously being unreasonable. You're blackmailing us. We only spat." Slap slap slapped out a few slaps. "You motherfuckers. Don't you know that I'm in the underworld? When have I ever been reasonable? Go go go, go to your house to get the money. We'll go now." As he spoke, he picked up the two men and left. He didn't say that he was fighting injustice for Vice Principal Sure or for Grandma Sure. He just didn't want to let them off the hook for spitting on his pants. Don't you like to make irresponsible remarks and accuse others? Today, I'll let you have a taste of being wronged. 10,000 yuan, not a cent less. No matter who comes to smooth things over, it won't work. Behind them, Grandmusher watched as Wuxiaoduo carried the two people away. She couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Immediately after, he felt a sense of comfort in his heart that had been stifled for a long time. It was a feeling that he had not felt in a long time. He had to endure a lot of this kind of abuse and criticism almost every day. With Grandmusher's cultivation, she could basically blow this kind of ordinary person into ashes with a single breath. But what use was that? Could it be that he could kill everyone in the world? However, although what Wuxiaoduo did today was barbaric, unreasonable, and even illegal to the bone, it was the first time in many years that Grandmusher felt her anger had been vented. This young man's temperament is really different from others. Grandmusher thought silently in her heart. In this world, there were many times when reasoning wouldn't solve any problems, so there was no need to reason. From another angle, he could just slap him. The background of this world was based on martial arts. The strong were respected. It was just that the masses had been protected too well for too long that they had long forgotten the basic nature of this world. Wuxiaoduo tormented them for an hour, escorting the two young men home to withdraw money. After that, he went to borrow money to raise money. In the end, he really managed to gather 10,000 star dollars. He only stopped when the 10,000 star dollars were in his pocket. Slap, 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 slap. After a few more slaps, Wuxiaoduo glared and scolded, "Little bastard. Remember, don't spit anywhere in the future. Do you understand?" Only then did he walk away. Behind him, the two young men's faces were beaten until they looked like pigs. They looked at each other and wanted to cry but had no tears. They were really unlucky today. Why did they spit on someone else's leg? And the other party was so fierce. They must be careful in the future. From the beginning to the end, the two of them didn't know why they were beaten. They just thought that it was an unlucky year and went back dejectedly. After that, they would have to live in debt for a long time and live hard. After turning into a street corner, Wuxiaoduo followed the map and found the local disabled servicemen's affairs office. In less than 2 minutes, he had already donated the 10,000 star dollars. In the future, I should come to Grandmusher's place often. Not only can I vent my anger for the old woman, but I can also donate more money to the disabled soldiers. It's not a bad idea. Since you have a mouth to curse and spit shit, you should have the ability to pay the fine. Today, I'm punishing you on behalf of the heavens. Wuxiaoduo was very proud of himself as he returned to the school. However, what he didn't know was that far behind him, Yi Chongqing, who had been following him, was stunned. He was dumbfounded as he watched this drama. To be honest, this experienced and knowledgeable headmaster of the Hidden Dragon University had never dreamt of Wuxiaoduo's actions. He had always sneered at such hooligans. He hated it very much. When toads were on the table, they would only discuss people if they didn't bite. However, today, why did he feel so fucking good? This method is not bad. It's effective and immediate. Headmaster Yi touched his chin and muttered to himself, "Whatever we do to the general trend of public opinion on the internet, there's no way we can debate with them. Even if there's a day when the injustice is redressed, we may not be able to change the trend of public opinion on the internet. However, if we encounter other excuses, it's easy to beat them up directly. I have to think about this carefully." Headmaster Yi felt that there seemed to be a different path in front of him. Yi Chongqing and Wuxiaoduo entered the school one after the other. As soon as they entered, they immediately felt that the atmosphere was very strange. The dust in the sky had yet to disperse. It seemed like someone was fighting in the sky. Faint roars and roars were still coming from the sky. Yi Chongqing's mind turned at lightning speed. His expression suddenly changed and he shouted, "Stop!" He rushed up. However, it was too late. The battle in the sky had already been decided. The figure fell like a meteor and hit the ground hard, creating a deep pit. The person in the pit was covered in blood. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. He seemed to be seriously injured. However, as soon as he landed, he immediately jumped up from the bottom of the pit and scolded wildly, "Xiang Kuangren, I already said it wasn't me. You fucking hit me so hard." The victor in the air was Xiang Bing's great-grandfather, the former first vice headmaster of Hidden Dragon High School, Xiang Quangren, who had just come out of seclusion. This old man had a tall and straight figure of 2.4 meters. He had grizzled hair, and in his hand was a square sky-decorated halberd that was at least 10 feet long. Coupled with his extremely burly and muscular body, he was like a heavenly general descending slowly from the sky. He was like an unshakable lofty mountain that was majestically descending to the world. Xiang Quangren pointed the sky piercer and shouted, "It wasn't you? Then why did you take my position as the first vice headmaster? Now that I'm back, you still dare to take it? If you're not courting death, then what is? I'm not dead. Do I need you to tell me what to do in my position? If you dare to take over my position, I'll kill you." The person on the ground was the current first vice headmaster, Vice Headmaster Wei. He was furious. "Who the fuck is taking over my position? I came because I received a transfer order. Do you think I wanted to come? Do you think the Hidden Dragon High School is still the same as before? If I had a choice, I wouldn't have come." Bullshit. Xiang Quangren had obviously been suppressing his anger for too long. He was looking for a way to vent his anger, so he was not interested in listening to Vice Headmaster Wei's explanation. He said angrily, "I'm suspecting that you were the one who found someone to plot against me. Otherwise, how could you be promoted? Do you know what the principle of profit is? You're the one who benefited." Xiang Quangren shouted, "No matter how you quibble, you can't escape suspicion." Vice Headmaster Wei only felt wronged and angry. "What does Xiang Quangren's matter have to do with me? Why are you throwing a tantrum at me? I'm a suspect?" Vice Headmaster Wei was so angry that he laughed. "You should at least show me evidence to support your suspicions, right?" Xiang Quangren grinned like a majestic tiger opening its bloody mouth. "You said it has nothing to do with you. Why don't you show me the evidence? Show me the evidence to prove that it has nothing to do with you. Hurry up." Vice Principal Wei was fuming with anger. "Can you be reasonable?" Xiang Quangren said matter-of-factly, "You stole my position, and you want me to reason with you? Bullshit reason." Vice Headmaster Wei was furious. "I didn't want to take this position. Then, do you think I gave it to you?" Xiang Quangren said disdainfully, "I don't have that kind of relationship with you." Vice Headmaster Wei was so angry that he could not speak. "I'll give you a few choices now. First, resign and get lost. Second, you'll be demoted. Think of a way yourself." Xiang Quangren said savagely, "I've been the first vice headmaster my whole life, and I've never resigned or been fired. I've only been in seclusion for a few days to recuperate. Now that I'm back, I've fallen from first to ninth. Fuck this. I can't take this lying down. You must give me a satisfactory explanation. If you can't take this lying down, you can go to the headmaster or the martial arts department." Vice Headmaster Wei cursed. "Why the fuck are you looking for me? This has nothing to do with me. I don't have the time. Anyway, I'm the first vice headmaster in the Hidden Dragon region. You used all kinds of underhanded means to take my position. Do you think you can be proud for the rest of your life? Now that I'm back, you have to think of a way to get me back to my original position. If you don't satisfy me, I'll fuck you every time I see you. I'll fuck you until you can't go to work. You can't work. As long as you come to school, I'll fuck you. When there's a meeting, you dare to steal my seat." Xiang Quangren had no intention of being reasonable at all. He just wanted to pester endlessly and spout out all kinds of fallacious reasoning. However, fallacious reasoning was not necessarily wrong. From Xiang Quangren's perspective, he had always been the first vice headmaster. He had not resigned, and the school had not fired him. He had only taken a sick leave. How did he become ninth? No way. He had to be given his original position. He had to be the first vice headmaster. Begging for votes. Recommendation votes. The past 3 days have been really tiring. As for whether or not I crossed the line in the previous update, I'll wait until it's blocked. The book's results were average, and the subscriptions were not good. Can't I write what I want to write? Can't I write to my heart's content? Chapter 407. Even though Vice Principal Wei felt that he was wronged by Erebus, He could not explain himself. I would like to postpone it, but who would be willing to do that? Xiang Kuangren snorted. That's your problem. What does it have to do with me? I want to be the first vice principal. What does everything else have to do with me? Vice Principal Wei was so angry that he clutched his chest. You old bastard Xiang. Just you wait, I'm not done with you. He turned around and said, Principal, you have to help me. Then he was stunned. Principal? Where's the principal? Not only him, even Zhou Xiaoduo did not see when Yi Chongqing disappeared. This sly old man, after hearing the reason for the fight, immediately ran away. Out of sight, out of mind, out of mind, out of sight, out of mind. It was a beautiful move. Xiang Kuangren snorted and pointed at Vice Principal Wei's secretary in the crowd. He shouted, now take me to my office right now and throw out all of that ignorant person stuff. Motherfucker, how dare he occupy my office? How dare he? Also, where's my secretary? Why isn't he here? Get him back here. If he can't come to work tomorrow, I'll break all 3 of your legs. The secretary looked wronged. Principal Xiang, this is not something I can control. You're the one who took his position, so you have to control this. I don't care about the process, I only want the results. Xiang Kuangren said arrogantly. Anyway, I want to see him tomorrow. If I can't see him by 8, I'll go beat you up at 8:01. That's settled. He picked up the secretary and strode forward. The secretary was about 1.7 meters tall, but when Xiang Kuangren carried him in his arms, he looked like an adult who was carrying a cat for a moment. The whole school was filled with whispers. Vice Principal Xiang was so domineering. So awesome. Obviously, most of the people in the school had not seen how domineering Xiang Kuangren was back then. Zhou Xiaoduo rolled his eyes and walked towards the first grades class. Along the way, he had already thought about most of this matter. He had thought that it would take a few more days for this matter to happen, but he had never expected that Vice Principal Xiang would make such a big move on his first day back. Behind him, Vice Principal Wei's angry and resentful yell could be heard. Xiang Kuangren, just you wait. Xiang Kuangren ignored him and strode forward with his secretary in hand. He turned his head and spat, muttering, wait my ass. The whole school was shocked. Almost none of the students had seen Vice Principal Xiang in person. They had only heard about him. But today they finally saw what a fierce person was and what an unreasonable person was. They couldn't help but discuss spiritedly, saying that they had learned something new and broadened their horizons. This kind of fight between 2 vice principals, even in the lower rank schools, was rarely seen or even heard of. However, no one would have thought that at the Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts Academy, they would be able to personally witness 2 high-ranking vice principals fighting in front of everyone's eyes. This feels so good. Zhou Xiaoduo praised in his heart. How could he not know what Xiang Kuangren's real intention was? It seemed that Xiang Kuangren himself already knew that after his departure, these things that happened in the Hidden Dragon High School were also because of his departure, causing the situation to take a turn for the worse and gradually become out of control. This time, when he came back, he used the most direct method of being a hooligan. He fought with all his might to turn the tide and help the building collapse. According to Li Chenglong's understanding, Vice Principal Xiang wasn't such a person. He was just a straightforward, irritable, straightforward person who didn't beat around the bush. He might be a little domineering, but it was all reflected in his fights with his opponents. He wasn't that extreme in his conduct. But now, in his first fight after coming back, he was full of hooliganism. Perhaps he had an epiphany. Little did they know that Xiang Kuangren directly swept through the office and found Yi Chongqing. What's wrong with you today? Yi Chongqing was a little unhappy. Why are you so persistent about Vice Principal Wei? Do you have some evidence in your hands? Evidence? Xiang Kuangren snorted. What evidence? Why do I have evidence in my hands? Can't I beat him up without evidence? Yi Chongqing was stunned. Boss, I didn't just stay at home for the past 20 years. I've been reflecting and pondering. Xiang Kuangren's beard was about to explode. He lowered his voice and said word by word. In the past, we were too honest, too gentlemanly. We forgot, or rather ignored, the essence of this world. I was splashed with the Forgetfulness River. It was baffling. The water of the Forgetfulness River belongs to the Umno Alliance. This is undeniable. But who said that the things of the Alliance can only be used by the people of the Alliance? How free is the Alliance to send so many masters to deal with me, a vice principal? Instead of using the water of the Forgetfulness River, why didn't they just join hands to kill me? In the battle that day it was said that I killed them, but in fact they just wanted to use the water of the Forgetfulness River to mess with me. After they succeeded, they didn't want to fight anymore, so it was as if I killed them. As the person directly involved, if I can't even tell the truth, I've lived in vain. In the battle that day, the other party's overall combat power was far above mine. As long as a few people died, they could definitely kill me. They just couldn't bear to pay such a big price. Old Lu was robbed and killed, but it was an accident that had never happened in so many years. You should know that the route Old Lu took was the safest one. If I really die, you won't be able to do anything. Now that the situation is like this, let's hurry up. Xiang Kuangren left. The door closed behind him with a bang. Yi Chongqing sighed and muttered, I didn't even touch the door frame when I went out this time. After that, he fell into deep thought. There must be a change in the world. Yi Chongqing sighed softly. Hidden dragon. In his mind, he could not help but think of Grandma Sher's words and Qin Fengyang's recommendation of Zhuo Duo for fortune-telling. Especially the words Zhuo Duo had broken down, he thought of Zhuo's fortune-telling and the word he had broken down for him. Every word and sentence entered his soul and heart. He could not help but fall into deep thought. Chapter 408. That afternoon, Zhuo Duo was still training alone with the weights, while the others continued to beat each other up. When Xingtian's eyes swept past Zhuo Duo from time to time, seeing Lieutenant General's was sword, which was only 8 taels of light, gradually connecting it to the sword that was as light as a feather and as light as a feather, he kept analyzing it in his heart. This kid's real trump card was either something lighter than 8 taels of light, or something unimaginably heavy. Tonight I must test it out. Otherwise, how can I continue teaching? As Zhuo Duo cultivated, he was also formulating a plan in his mind. Now that his cultivation had been pushed to the high level of the Xiantian realm at this rate, he only needed 2 more nights to reach the level of elemental eruption. At that time he would have to start suppressing it for the first time. At the same time, Zhuo Duo also felt that his Flaming Sun scripture was about to be upgraded. The Great Flaming Sun scripture was about to evolve into the Golden Sun scripture. His rapid progress was partly due to his hard work and partly due to the Dragon Blood Flying Dagger and the Jade of Astral Souls. However, the Jade of Astral Souls had been greatly depleted, and the Dragon Blood Flying Dagger was almost out of energy. He had to think of another way. The first was to replenish the Jade of Astral Souls. The second was to recharge the Dragon Blood Flying Dagger if possible. The third was to collect heavenly materials and earthly treasures. He had to pay special attention to items with yang attributes. For each of these aspects, the more the better. Looks like I have to find a way to contact Fang Yinhua and see if there's a chance to slaughter a group of people from the Alliance. The battle with the Phoenix Pulse Spirit was a waste. If there's a chance, I can't waste it again. I wonder when Gao Wu will start training. If I have to wait for a while, I'll have to think of a way to get out of the city. I'll bring Swollen out and get some materials. It's not a good idea to just sit around and eat. Shda. Zhuo Duo came up with several plans in his mind, but his face remained expressionless. School was about to end. Everyone else rushed to the nourishment chamber. The nourishment chamber was still in the free phase, so it would be a waste not to use it. When Xingtian, on the other hand, went to Zhuo Duo. Show me your hand, when Xingtian said. Zhuo Duo didn't know what was going on, but he obediently stretched out his arm. When Xingtian grabbed his hand and rolled up his sleeves, revealing an arm bracer-shaped weight on his arm. It didn't look very heavy, and in Zhuo's hands, it could bend flexibly with the movements of his arms. Rather than saying that it was a burden, it was more like a carefully crafted weapon. However, when Xingtian's pupils suddenly shrank. This thing should be a pair, right? When Xingtian immediately pulled Zhuo's sleeves down and reached out to pinch his other arm through his shirt. Yes. How heavy is it? 30,000 kilograms. Just one? Yes. When Xingtian didn't speak for a long time. It was only when Zhuo Duo thought that he was going to fall asleep that he said, There's a gravity space sealed in it, but I'm afraid there are only a few of them in the whole continent. He seemed to want to ask Zhuo how he got it, but he stopped halfway. What did it have to do with him how he got it? This was his child's opportunity, so why was he asking about it? Why was he so curious? He had committed the biggest taboo that a cultivator shouldn't commit. As long as he knew that the cultivation plan he formulated for this was feasible, everything would be fine. This thing may be heavy, but it's flexible and won't affect your movements. When Xingtian said, when you can cultivate to the point where you can carry this without any hindrance, remember to look for me. I'll give you something else, something heavier. Okay. Zhuo quickly agreed. The position he had set for himself was to carry this full set of weights: hammer, 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 hammer. These 5 hammer techniques. He had to be able to perform them 3 to 5 times in a row, so that he could be familiar with them and move them as smoothly as flowing water. Moreover, he had to have some energy left after he was done. Only then would he be able to carry them with ease and without any hindrance. According to his rough estimation, according to his current progress and the growth of his strength, as well as his prediction of suppressing the agitation of his innate realm vital essence for 10 to 20 times, and even entering the embryonic breathing realm, he should be able to achieve this goal after the flaming sun scripture leveled up by 1 level. At this moment, Zhuo had completely ignored the problem of the power of the hammer, and the inertia of his swinging as his strength increased. He was wholeheartedly rushing towards this goal. Anyway, he felt that it shouldn't be difficult. School was over. Zhuo and Li Chenglong were still walking together, while Wen Xingtian was following behind them at a leisurely pace. Teacher Wen, why are you also walking in this direction? Zhuo asked curiously. Yes, I'm going to borrow something from the principal, and then I'm going to look for you. Wen Xingtian said. Wait at home and don't run around. Wait for me to pay you a home visit. Zhuo's face fell. Originally, he had wanted to look for Fang Yinhua tonight. Now it seemed that he couldn't do it. He didn't expect Teacher Wen to actually want to pay him a home visit. My parents, sister, and wife are all not around. Who are you going to pay a home visit to? When he reached home, Zhuo went upstairs and took a cold shower. Just as he came out, he saw Wen Xingtian already sitting in his living room, looking at him indifferently. So fast. Zhuo was surprised. Yes, so the principal has already given that thing to you. I've made a wasted trip. When Xingtian said, come, let's go in. I'll practice your secret weapon with you. If you practice alone, it won't be as good as having a sparring partner. You'll be able to understand your own strengths and weaknesses faster, and improve through actual combat. That's true improvement. This happened at 6:30 in the evening. When Zhuo came out of the Annihilation Tower, it was already 9:30 in the evening. He was thrown out by Wen Xingtian. Like throwing a dead dog, he was thrown directly onto the bed. The moment he came into contact with the bed, the sweat that flowed out from his body instantly soaked the entire bed. Wen Xingtian's expression was still indifferent. He used his life spirit's true essence to check the meridians in Zhuo's shoulders, arms, waist, and thighs and knees. He said, you've trained your body well. I'll come again tomorrow night. You rest by yourself. I'll go down and check on Li Chenglong. Zhuo just snorted and fell asleep from exhaustion. These 3 hours were hell for Zhuo. At Wen Xingtian's request, Zhuo attacked him with all his might. Zhuo was more than happy to do so. He started to attack without hesitation. In the first 5 minutes, Zhuo felt extremely satisfied. He had never felt so satisfied in his life. He wielded the 2 sledgehammers as if they were his arms and fingers, majestic and awe-inspiring. His hammering skills also improved a lot because of this. As Wen Xingtian said, actual combat was the best way to improve. In the second 5 minutes, Zhuo felt a little tired. In the third 5 minutes, he gradually began to feel weak. The sledgehammers were powerful weapons. Even if 2 people were of the same level, they could completely crush the enemy. However, they were too heavy. This was also the reason why martial artists rarely use such heavy weapons. For example, if you used a sword, you could fight for 3 days and 3 nights. However, if you used a hammer, you might not even last an hour. Sometimes, a battle of attrition was needed. Using a hammer could not be a battle of attrition. At the fourth 5 minutes, Swishaoduo was already drenched in sweat. He was trying his best to hold on, so he couldn't help but be exhausted like a dead dog. However, the problem was that when Xingtian did not give him any time to rest. Bring out your potential. If you can't do it, eat some elixirs. Use more strength. Where's your strength? Again. Again. Come last 10 times. After 10 times, last 5 times. After 5 times, last 3 times. After 3 times, really last 2 times. After 2 times, last time. After the last time, there was a continuous stream of people saying last time. Last time. One last time. This is really the last time. This is definitely the last time. In the end, Swishaoduo felt that he was about to faint. He was only carrying the 2 hammers, but his arms were almost dislocated. Although he was only using a training hammer to train with when Xingtian. After 3 hours of continuous training, Swishaoduo was completely defeated. Swishaoduo felt that training with Swishaonian for half a month was not as good as these 3 hours of continuous training. What was even more incredible was that under Wen Xingtian's care, Swishaoduo's arms were not swollen at all. Downstairs, when Xingtian left the villa at 10:30, leaving Li Chenglong lying on the sofa and a puddle of mud. In this 1 hour, Li Chenglong and Swishaoduo were almost drilled to death. They were so tired that they did not even want to move their eyelids. They fell asleep immediately. However, on the way back, when Xingtian was in high spirits. Not bad. Not bad at all. It's actually the only surprise in my life. Such heavy hammers. I'm afraid only the hammers of the legendary Peerless and Invincible the Flood which can be compared to them. Swishaoduo's hammers are about the same, but his cultivation is far from it. I still have to train him hard. Looks like I have to come here a few more times in the future. Come here to make me happy, come here to make me happy, come here to make me happy, come here to make me happy and forget to go back. When Xingtian silently made up his mind. Yes, the other students also have to be assigned homework at night. Anyway, with my divine sense, I can monitor these kids in the dormitory when I close my eyes. As for Xiangbing and Xiangchong, I don't care about them anymore. I'll just talk to the vice principal and ask him to personally instruct them. It's better for them to train the people from the Xiang family themselves. The students in the class probably did not expect that the rare homework in the high martial arts school would be added to the schedule by Wen Xingtian on a whim because of the unexpected training between Swishaoduo and Li Chenglong. Chapter 409. When Swishaoduo woke up, it was already 4:30 a.m. the next day. At this moment, Swishaoduo only felt sore all over. He supported his body to circulate 99 times before he felt better. He directly picked up the bucket and gulped down the water. In a flash, his whole body was drenched in sweat. Only then did he feel alive again. It's too cruel. Don't tell me I have to do it again tonight. I'm so tired. My waist and legs don't feel like they're mine anymore. For the first time, Swishaoduo felt a chill down his spine when it came to practicing martial arts. It was fine if it was just practicing martial arts, but when Xingtian's poisonous tongue was also constantly practiced, it was really a double blow. Yesterday, it almost made Swishaoduo doubt his life. After all, it had always been Swishaoduo's strong point to flaunt his tongue. He didn't expect someone to give him a taste of his own medicine. It was really a lot more stressful. It's different from Teacher Qin. Teacher Qin never scolds people. If he doesn't like it, he will beat people up. If he's happy, he will also beat people up. But Teacher Wen will only use his mouth and not his hands. He will scold people all the time. If he doesn't like it, he will scold people. If he's happy, he will still scold people. Swishaoduo couldn't help but feel sad in his heart. The 2 teachers I've met are both very, very good teachers. But their personalities. It really makes me uncomfortable. He took out his phone and opened his contact list to find Feng Yinua's new number after she came to Fenghai. He immediately dialed it. It rang 7 or 8 times before the other side picked up. The voice was very impatient. Who are you? Haha. Damn this accent. Swishaoduo moved the receiver away from his ear and looked at the number again. It was right. Why did he have this accent? It's me. Your young master. Duo said in a dignified and condescending manner. There was no reply from the other side. After a few seconds, he asked hesitantly, "Are you the young master of Gada?" Phoenix City. Left. Duo was getting a little impatient. This drama queen Fang Yan was going on and on. "Ah, it's young master." Fang Yinhua only hesitated for a second before becoming enthusiastic. However, he was cursing in his heart. "When did I become your slave? Why did even the young master come out?" "I'm already in Fenghai." Duo asked, "Where are you in Fenghai? How's the previous battle going?" "I opened a shop right across from Fenghai's Hidden Dragon High School. The biggest ladies' lingerie store is my business." Fang Yinhua was completely awake. She immediately reported her situation. "Ladies' lingerie store?" Duo was dumbfounded. "Fuck, you're selling women's underwear in front of Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts School? What the fuck? What a weird taste." "Yes, young master. You said it's right beside Hidden Dragon High School. After thinking about it, I decided to spend a lot of money to buy the 2 stores right across the school. One of them is a lingerie agent specializing in the world's top brands." Fang Yinua's words were full of pride and satisfaction. The UMNO Alliance wanted to find her? Who would have thought that she, Fang Yinhua, a half-step god-reigning expert, would hide here and sell ladies' lingerie? I really admire myself for having such a brilliant idea at that time. Duo was speechless. "I just want to ask you, if you sell ladies' lingerie, how do you expect me to meet you frequently?" Duo said angrily, "I'm also the current school hunk of Hidden Dragon High School. Do you want me to shop in a ladies' lingerie store every day?" Fang Yinhua was speechless. Yes, she didn't consider this matter very thoroughly. She only thought about her own safety and didn't consider Duo. Wait a minute. Current school hunk? Fang Yinhua was puzzled. "How did you become the current school hunk? The freshman training period shouldn't be over yet, right? Isn't your current nickname the Sword King? Is there something wrong with your fucking focus?" Duo, who was exposed, said angrily, "I'm the one asking you a question now. It's fine, I'll buy the store next to it. Do you want to make a coffee shop?" She was resting after shopping with a lady. Then she went to a private room on the 2nd and 3rd floors. "Have you solved everything?" Fang Yinhua quickly came up with a solution. She appeared to be rich and overbearing. The aura of not lacking in money almost drilled out from the phone. "You're so rich. Cough, it's nothing." Fang Yinhua was proud. "With my methods I can make him move out in 3 days. Shda. Duo was speechless. "Hold on, don't let him lose money." I understand. How can I not understand this? Be careful, safety first. Problems that can be solved with money are not problems. Also, I need some high-grade jade of astral souls. Get me some. Duo ordered. After all, it was high-grade jade of astral souls. Even with Xiaoduo's thick skin, he didn't ask how much he needed. It was fine as long as he could get some. "No problem. Young master, how much do you need? I'll prepare it as soon as possible." Fang Yinhua took charge. To Fang Yinhua, money was nothing. Jade of astral souls? So what? There are so many rich families in Fenghai City. I know all their warehouses. These things are not worth a mention. I can get them easily. Of course, the more the better. Duo said. Fang Yinhua subconsciously said. Then I'll prepare a few tens of thousands for you to use first. Duo started to wonder if this guy had betrayed him again. He threw out such a huge bait and waited for him to go over to get it? How could he be so rich and overbearing? He casually asked for a few tens of thousands of high-grade jade of astral souls. Tisk. Also, young master, you don't have to worry about money. I can even get a few 100 million. It's not difficult. Fang Yinhua continued. Master Zhua, who had always regarded money as his life and made it his life's work, was suddenly hit by 1,000,000 tons of explosive force. He was bored to death and suddenly lost interest in making money. Damn, with this guy around, how can I make money? Alright, you go ahead with your work. I'll go over when I'm free. Duo didn't want to talk to this guy anymore. He was obviously hit hard. Okay, young master. I don't go out usually. I've set up a private tea room upstairs. When I'm free I can drink tea and read books. It's to cultivate my character. Fang Yinhua said a few more words and hung up. Zhuo Xiaoduo was speechless. Drink tea and read books. Cultivate his character. Damn. Did I just turn a great devil of the Umno Alliance into a cultured person? After taking a shower and brushing his teeth, Zhuo Xiaoduo looked at himself in the mirror. He still looked as if he had been struck by lightning. On the second day of the battle, Zhuo Xiaoduo was once again abandoned and put aside. When Xingtian said, "Go practice your martial arts and hidden weapons. If you don't want to practice, then do whatever you want." After that he didn't ask anymore. When Xingtian knew that Zhuo Xiaoduo's current realm was only at the advanced level of the innate realm. However, when it came to actual combat power it was much higher than that. Although many of the other 35 people were in the embryonic breathing realm, when it came to actual combat, they wouldn't be able to defeat Zhuo Xiaoduo even if they were tied together. However, if Zhuo Xiaoduo used his hammer, he could turn them all into standard dumplings in 3 minutes. Moreover, even their bones would be turned into pulp. They weren't even on the same level as each other. This made Wen Xingtian extremely surprised, but at the same time he was also troubled. This was because Zhuo Xiaoduo was bound to take up more of his energy. However, Wen Xingtian's cultivation direction and cultivation techniques were not suitable for Zhuo Xiaoduo. This was what made Wen Xingtian the most upset. He was the #1 teacher of the Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts Academy. He had countless talents, but now he couldn't even teach a student. This wouldn't do. How could this do? In the blink of an eye it was lunchtime again. Zhuo Xiaoduo and the others had just entered the cafeteria, when they immediately felt that something was wrong. The atmosphere in the cafeteria was completely different from usual. Looking around they saw that the best table was empty. The tables on the side were all filled with students bustling about. Only this large table, which could seat more than a dozen people, was empty. The surface of the table was clean, and there wasn't even a drop of soup on it. It wasn't just a coincidence that this table had been left empty. Zhuo Xiaoduo focused and looked again. The 19 two-clawed golden dragon boys were all standing at one end. One of them was Zhao Wensheng, who had fought with him yesterday. On the other side there were all girls in white. Zhao Wensheng's female classmate from yesterday was also among them. There were about 17 or 18 of them. The eyes of this group of boys and girls were all fixed on Zhuo Xiaoduo, who was stepping into the cafeteria. More than 30 pairs of eyes were burning with fighting spirit, ready to erupt at any moment. The imposing aura made Zhuo Xiaoduo squint his eyes. Zhao Wensheng's face was still bruised and swollen, and there were several bumps on his head that hadn't disappeared. Although he couldn't see his body, his face and body were probably full of such scars. Zhuo Xiaoduo couldn't help but feel a little strange. "Old Zhao, what happened to you? Were you beaten up?" Although he didn't go easy on him yesterday, he didn't hit him that much. When Zhao Wensheng heard Zhuo Xiaoduo's question, his face turned red. He said hatefully, "It's all because of you." Hearing this, the students around him were all overjoyed. They were laughing so hard that they couldn't stand it. Yesterday, Zhao Wensheng had lost to Zhuo Xiaoduo for a table. After lunch, he went back to class in the afternoon and was directly picked up by the head teacher and beaten up by him. "You fought with a freshman for a table and lost. Zhao Wensheng, you're so promising, so promising. You've made me lose face. It's fine if you won the fight, but you actually lost. You actually lost to a junior. I'll make you lose, I'll make you lose." Zhao Wensheng was beaten up by the head teacher who hadn't hit a student in half a year. To Zhao Wensheng, that beating was enough to make the world go dark, the sun and the moon lose their light. It was so miserable that it was unbearable to look at. It's so embarrassing. Chapter 4:10. The homeroom teacher flew into a rage and almost smashed the table on the podium. "All of you go tomorrow. You must snatch that table back for me. Earn back this face for me." Hence, the scene in front of them happened. Year 2, Class 7, everyone moved to meet up with Zhuo Xiaoduo again. At this moment, near the window, a middle-aged man was holding a teacup and sipping tea. He looked gentle and refined. He seemed to have a good temper and a kind face. His position was the best place to watch the fight over the table. He didn't even need to stand up. He could see everything clearly just by tilting his head. The man's face was filled with a gentle smile. The first impression he gave was that he had a good temper and was very easy to talk to. However, Zhao Wensheng and his classmates didn't dare to look in his direction. This was because this person was none other than Zhao Wensheng's homeroom teacher. He was also the person who lost his temper and almost beat his student to death yesterday. Today the homeroom teacher gave a strict order. The whole class was to go. They had fought with Zuoxiao Duo before. If they couldn't win, they would all stand and eat. As for who would go up, you all can discuss among yourselves. I don't care. The outcome of a fight over a table between students was related to the teacher's pride. If Zuoxiao Duo had snatched a table from someone in the same year, the homeroom teacher wouldn't be angry. Class 1 was originally a class of geniuses, and every student was the cream of the crop. Zuoxiao Duo himself was the champion of the Longhu leaderboard. Now that he had just entered the high martial school, he hadn't started his systematic teaching yet. With his original foundation, it was normal for him to lose. But now it was Zuoxiao Duo who had won against a senior. Then the situation would be completely different. Obviously, this teacher felt extremely humiliated. He didn't even dare to go to the canteen where the teachers ate. It was said that when he went to eat last night, a few teachers he was familiar with were gossiping about him. He was so embarrassed that he almost committed suicide on the spot. Aya, old Tian, I heard that your student was beaten up by a freshman? Haha, I thought it was a joke. Why? Look at your expression, is it true? Haha. TSK. Old Tian's teaching standard is really good. Sai, if my student were to be beaten up by a junior, how ashamed would I be? At the very least, I wouldn't be able to face my colleagues. Sai, how embarrassing. They were all old acquaintances, so they didn't have any qualms about joking around. After being in the Hidden Dragon High Martial School for so many years, their mouths were as sharp as knives, and their tongues were as sharp as blades. Teacher Tian was already lucky that he didn't vomit blood on the spot. Why aren't you sitting? Zuoxiao Duo looked surprised. It's rare to have an empty seat. Why don't you sit down and eat? What are you standing there for? The surrounding students, as well as Meng Zhongjun, who was standing behind Zuoxiao Duo, could not bear to watch. Don't you have the slightest idea why she didn't want to sit? A pig's nose is stuck in a scallion, what are you pretending for? Opposite. Zhao Wensheng took a deep breath and patted the table. Zuoxiao Duo, there's an empty table here. Do you dare to sit? This was an official challenge. Zuoxiao Duo laughed. Thank you, seniors, for reserving seats for us. Come everyone, let's go and sit. Let's not waste our seniors' good intentions. As he spoke, he took the lead and sat down. Li Chenglong, Xiangbing, Meng Zhongjun, Zhan Piapiao, and the others did not show any signs of weakness. They walked over one by one and sat down on the seats one by one. In just a moment, the table of 16 people was already full. Even the other students in Zuoxiao's class who did not have a seat also sat next to those who had a seat. 36 people, not a single one was missing. All of them sat steadily and did not say a word. All the spectators looked solemn. Teacher Tian, who was sitting by the window, showed a serious and admiring expression. Not leaving, not abandoning, and going through hardships together. Just this point alone was worthy of a thumbs up. The attitude of the 36 people in the class who advanced and retreated together was undoubtedly expressed in the silence. Many students had looks of envy on their faces as well as sighing, because this was something that could not be done in their class. This also proved another point. Other than Zuoxiao Duo, the other 35 people were willing to bet on Zuoxiao Duo. If Zuoxiao Duo won, everyone would sit down and eat together. If Zuoxiao Duo lost, everyone would stand and eat together. If you win, I will accompany you in glory and wealth. If you lose, I will accompany you in your downfall. The moment they sat down together, the 36 people in the class became an inseparable whole. Seeing this scene, a boy in Zhao Wensheng's class stepped out from the crowd. This person had a smile on his face. He was tall and looked about the same height as Zuoxiao Duo. His eyes were shining, and it was obvious that his cultivation level was higher than his peers. He walked over slowly. Under everyone's gaze, he slammed the table and shouted in a deep voice, "This table is ours. Please get up." The snatching of the table entered the process and the curtains were drawn. Zhao Wenxing said, Zhuoxiao Duo, this is the class monitor of the second grade, Class 5 Wu Qing. Someone said, oh. The second grade Class 5 directly sent out their class monitor. It seemed that this battle was very important and they were determined to win. But it was no wonder. The homeroom teacher had personally come to watch. If they lost this battle, it would be very embarrassing. After all, under the basic principle of martial arts and cultivation level, if the class monitor of Class 7 lost, it was equivalent to the entire class losing. The grudge with the second grade Class 7 would end here, or it would extend to Class 4. At the very least, after Class 7, Class 8, Class 9, and all the other classes would have to take a detour when they saw Zhuoxiao Duo. If they were unhappy, they could go and beat the class monitor of Class 7 first. Then they would have the qualifications to fight for a table with Zhuoxiao Duo. This was the rule. The basic principle of snatching a table. Wu Qing. Your surname is Wu? Zhuoxiao Duo slowly stood up. That's right, my surname is Wu. Wu Qing said indifferently. The Wu Yuntian you killed, according to seniority, is a cousin of mine. But today's matter has nothing to do with the Wu family. You can call me class monitor of Class 7. You don't need to call me by my name. Right now, I am only the class monitor of Class 7. I represent Class 7. It has nothing to do with anything else. Wu Qing said. Zhuoxiao Duo laughed loudly and said, good, then it's settled. Since the agreement has been set, then let's begin. Before he finished speaking, he floated up from his seat. With a flash of starlight, he flew out of the window. Wu Qing's white robe fluttered like a large bird as he flew out. With a loud bang, almost everyone squeezed to the window and took the best seats to watch the battle. The second grade Class 7 students were all present. The first grade Class 1 students were all in place. The two classes were fighting for a table. Below, the two people had already turned into two whirlwinds, entangling each other and beginning their battle. Two white figures were entangled in a ball, fighting fiercely on the ground downstairs, constantly emitting pitter-patter sounds of fighting and collisions. Those with poor eyesight would not be able to tell which one was which. Pung 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 that the two people exchanged dozens of punches, and for a moment they were evenly matched. Then they rushed forward and attacked with their fists and feet. From the ground to 5 meters in the air, the battle was getting more and more intense. All that could be seen were still two white figures entangled together. It was getting harder and harder to see their figures clearly. The only feeling that the spectators had was that these two were actually evenly matched. They were evenly matched. Even the head teacher of Class 7, Teacher Tian, had a serious expression. Zhuoxiao Duo had just entered the school less than half a month ago, and his own student had already trained bitterly in the Hidden Dragon High School for a year. Moreover, he was the top talent in the class, second to none. It was actually a draw? Boom! Another palm met, and the two white figures were separated by the aftershock. They flew out like large birds, and almost at the same time. Clang! Clang! Two sword cries rang out at the same time. The two of them simultaneously drew their weapons as they retreated. Following that, they twisted their bodies in the air and rapidly flew back. The dazzling sword chi was dazzling and dazzling. The whistling sound of the wind breaking was breathtaking. Zhuoxiao Duo was on the left, and Wu Qing was on the right. The two people were moving at almost the same speed, and their long swords were shining with cold light, rushing to the sky. A misty rain suddenly covered the battle outside the window, and a dragon's roar sounded from Wu Qing's side. The dragon-like sword aura shook its head and wagged its tail, and it was really like a swimming dragon shining with cold light. It forcefully plunged into the misty rain, and then came out again. Clang clang clang. The two swords clashed continuously, and neither gave way to the other. Then there was a loud explosion, and the two people kicked each other while their swords were clashing. They were still separated, and only the sword aura lingered and did not dissipate, entangling together. Zhuoxiao Duo let out a long howl, feeling that this battle was exceptionally satisfying. A sense of pride grew in his chest, and he actually took the lead to counterattack with a loud roar. Although Wu Qing was a member of the Wu clan, his cultivation was really not to be underestimated. Zhuoxiao Duo had gone through so many accumulations, but Wu Qing's vital qi was actually above Zhuoxiao Duo's. Furthermore, His battle experience was also extremely rich. He was completely different from the opponents that Zhuo Duo had encountered before, and this Wu Qing's current cultivation realm was really not very high. He was only at the pinnacle of the embryonic breathing realm. However, in the situation where there were primordial elixir realm students in his class, he was still able to suppress everyone and firmly hold the position of class monitor. Obviously, he was also a genius. Moreover, this person must be the kind of person who suppressed the agitation of his vital qi in every realm, and limited himself to breaking through. The only thing was, how many times had this person suppressed it? The more Zhuo Duo fought, the more comfortable he felt. It was the kind of joy of meeting a worthy opponent and meeting a talented person. The sword light in his hand flashed, and a hazy rain mist was scattered. In a trance there were already Xiao raindrops falling. This was the little rain sword. He had to admit that his godfather's swordsmanship was really awesome. Other than the name of the swordsmanship, which always made Zhuo Duo blush, everything else was totally awesome. He was a little tired and he couldn't finish this fight. Now his mind was filled with the thought that there couldn't be no good people in these few clans, right? So he was struggling with this question. Chapter 4:11. Zhuo Duo was pleased. Due to his opponent's excellence, his swordsmanship attainments had made a breakthrough. He was becoming more and more adept at wielding his sword. However, Wu Qing, who was opposite him, was not so pleased. He was even inexplicably shocked. Could this brat in front of him actually be a demon? I suppressed my martial arts master realm 6 times, and the innate realm thorny path 5 times before breaking through to the embryonic breathing realm. Now, in the embryonic breathing realm, I have already climbed to the peak and started to suppress my vital essence for the first time. It can be said that I have accumulated a lot of experience. However, with my foundation, my ability and cultivation are actually only on par with this Zhuo Duo. Didn't he just enter the school? Didn't his information say that he only had innate realm cultivation? Even if he had suppressed his vital essence and limited his realm, even if he had cultivation at the pinnacle of the innate realm, he was still more than a realm away from me. How could he be so difficult to deal with? While he was feeling anxious, his long sword moved even more brilliantly. It was extremely exciting. All the spectators were unable to take their eyes off the battle. This battle simply made them feel relaxed and happy. Regardless of whether they were seniors or juniors, each and every one of them was dazzled and immersed in the battle. Perhaps in the eyes of others, the battle prowess was just so. However, in this battle, the sword will, technique, agility, prediction, battle awareness, and battle experience were all meticulous and exquisite. Not only Wu Qing of the 2nd grade, but also Zhuo Duo of the 1st grade, both of them looked like they had been through hundreds of battles. This was something that everyone could see clearly. One was the class monitor of the 1st grade, and the other was the class monitor of the 2nd grade. No matter which one it was, after this battle, they were already worthy of the position of class monitor, and also worthy of the title of genius. Of course, regardless of victory or defeat, the potential of this 1st grade Zhuo Duo was still slightly greater. After all, he was a junior who had just entered the school. As the battle continued, the sword qi emitted by the two of them became denser and denser. The clanging sounds of collisions became more and more urgent. It was as if the wind was blowing lotus leaves, or the rain was hitting banana leaves. They connected together, and beads of all sizes fell onto the jade plate, one after the other. The misty rain continued to expand, and the raindrops gradually increased. On the other hand, the long dragon of sword qi did not weaken. It dashed left and right, shaking its head and wagging its tail. Sword light would sometimes soar into the sky and bloom in midair, and sometimes it would explode in the misty rain. After an unknown number of explosions, the two men were once again sent flying. Everyone could finally see the two men clearly. They saw that the two men's bodies and faces were covered in dense beads of sweat. It was obvious that this was caused by the fierce battle. Then Zhuo Duo spun his body again, and the sword light surged like the rising tide of the sea. From near to far, from far to near, one after another, the waves rose again and again. Just by looking at the sword light, everyone's ears seemed to have heard the sound of the rolling tide. On the other hand, Wu Qing's sword flew up and down. His entire body was like a tornado as he spun at an extremely fast speed. In an instant he had already formed a dazzling sword energy dragon that was like a cylinder. It's time to decide the victor. It was unknown who it was, but someone said softly. Everyone's expression immediately became unprecedentedly serious. They did not even dare to blink for a moment, for fear that they would miss out on something. With a long howl, Wuxia Duo spread out his cat spirit sword. The surging tide of sword chi became more and more turbulent as it soared into the sky. The sword light turned the sky into waves, and the waves rolled up into the sky. For a moment, what everyone saw seemed to be an endless sea. The snow-white waves rolled up into the sky, and thousands of horses galloped and wreaked havoc, crashing down on everything. At the same time, there was also a long howl from the opposite side. The huge dragon of sword chi brazenly pierced through the endless void and arrived in the world like lightning. High up in the sky, the sword light was indeterminate, and it drove straight in, continuing to attack the tide of sword chi. However, in the tide, countless raindrops fell from the sky with a pitter-patter, increasing the power of the tide that was already raging. The earth-shattering rainstorm and the tide that stretched to the horizon converged into a wave that connected the sky and the earth. The three streams of rain and tide converged and pushed back strongly. It forcefully suppressed the long dragon of sword light that was surging towards the extreme. All the senior students sighed at the same time. This, Wu Qing had lost. With two puffs, two white figures, one on the left and one on the right, appeared again. Wuxia's body was in mid-air, and he slowly descended. The sword light in his hand flashed, and the cat spirit sword was already in its scabbard. His tall and straight posture returned to the ground. He was still tall and handsome, and he was still out of this world. On the opposite side, Wu Qing's white robe had 17 or 18 holes. When the breeze blew, the holes fluttered in all directions. There were also specks of blood on his face and arms. However, it was as if he did not feel it. He only looked at the long sword in his hand with a distressed expression. The long sword in his hand, which was originally shining with cold light and threatening, was now out of shape. The two sides of the blade had completely turned into saw teeth. This sword was already broken. Wu Qing sighed with melancholy, and a heartfelt heartache appeared on his face. He gently put the sword back into the scabbard, and raised his head to say, "Junior brothers, what a beautiful boxing technique, what a sharp sword technique, what a powerful sword technique. I've lost this match." Wuxia Duo laughed and said with some pride, "Of course, I am the king of swords." Hearing this, both the upstairs and downstairs burst into laughter. A girl shouted, "That's the bitch of bitch king." Following this, the laughter became louder. However, Wuxia Duo was not ashamed. Instead, he was proud of it. He said loudly, "I don't care if you are the king, as long as you are the king. Once the fight is over, let's eat, let's eat." On the opposite side, Wu Qing smiled bitterly and said, "That's right, I don't care if you are the king, as long as you are the king. The winner is the king, and the loser is a thief. Our second grade class 7 has lost this battle. I am sorry, teacher, I have embarrassed you." He bowed deeply towards the window. Teacher Tian stood up and laughed loudly. "You have shown your full strength. This battle you did not lose unjustly. How is it embarrassing? I'll give you 3 months to do your best to snatch the table back. For this meal, I will stand and eat with you." Wuxia Duo and Wu Qing walked up the stairs side by side. Wuxia Duo sat down to eat. The entire class sat down to eat. No matter if they were sitting on the chairs or sitting on the floor, they all ate with big mouthfuls of food. Their hearts were filled with excitement. Behind Wuxia Duo, Teacher Tian stood upright, holding his plate with one hand. His expression was normal as he ate with big mouthfuls of food. Behind him, all the students of the second grade class 7 also stood upright, holding their plates and eating with big mouthfuls. Everyone's eyes were red. A few girls looked at their teacher's back as they ate. When they saw their teacher eating while standing, their tears fell onto their plates. At this time, no one in the dining hall spoke. The entire dining hall was silent. At most, there was the sound of swallowing, chewing, and drinking soup. This time, Wuxia Duo didn't purposely speed up his meal. Instead, he followed his normal pace and finished his meal unhurriedly. He could have left early yesterday to save face for Zhao Wensheng. However, if he had left early today, Teacher Tian would have accompanied the students to be punished. His intention of educating the students by example would have been greatly reduced. That would have been disrespectful to Teacher Tian's efforts. No shame in be brave. He believed that the students of the second grade class 7 would never forget this meal for the rest of their lives. Zhuoxiaoduo wouldn't do something that would harm others without benefiting himself by ruining this special class. After eating at a normal speed, Zhuoxiaoduo put down his chopsticks. All the students of the first grade put down their chopsticks and stood in an orderly manner with solemn expressions. Zhuoxiaoduo turned around and bowed to Teacher Tian. Then, the entire class bowed to Teacher Tian once in an orderly manner. Under Zhuoxiaoduo's lead, they walked out of the dining hall in a single file and left quietly. Teacher Tian sighed softly and put down his plate. Without saying a word, he left with his hands behind his back. All the students of the second grade class 7 behind him did not speak for a long time. All of them were breathing heavily. Go back and cultivate. Cultivate as if your life depends on it. We must snatch this table back. One of them gritted his teeth and said. Just as he finished speaking, he was slapped on the head by the student next to him. Then, each of you should write an essay on your understanding. The teacher's teachings were just force-feeding. What the students understood was the principles of conduct, and a warning bell in their hearts in the future. When Xingtian would not waste his breath on these aspects, he did not say much and left a lot of empty space. After a few simple sentences, he began to explain the difficulties and things to take note of. Then the class continued to battle, when Xingtian continued to be an observer. After school, when Xingtian gathered the class, he said lightly, there is something. After monitors was reminder yesterday, I suddenly remembered that there is something that has not been arranged. The class. Zhuoxiaoduo? I reminded you? What did I remind you of? He instinctively felt that something was wrong. Monitors were reminded me about the homework after class, when Xingtian said indifferently with his hands behind his back. Next, I will arrange it. It must be completed. If you can't do it by tomorrow, don't blame me for being merciless. 35 pairs of eyes stared at Zhuoxiaoduo's back in unison. They were like 70 alls. The sound of teeth grinding could be heard quietly. Zhuoxiaoduo instantly felt as if he was being dismembered by 70 sharp knives. He could not help but break out in cold sweat. Was it necessary? Was it necessary to hold such a huge grudge? He laughed dryly. Under Wen Xingtian's threatening gaze, he did not dare to deny it. He could only turn around and say weakly, I'm doing this for your own good. 35 people gritted their teeth and chuckled. Their gazes were as sharp as knives. Hee. Then we are really. Thank you so much. Chapter 412. Isn't it just some homework? Look at your attitude. Zhuoxiaoduo was frightened by the stares of the whole class. He could not help but feel a little indignant. If Teacher Wen forgets in the future, I will definitely remind her that night, when Xingtian went to the villa for the second time. He fought with Zhuoxiaoduo and Li Chenglong respectively. Today, he obviously had more strength than yesterday, causing Zhuoxiaoduo to scream incessantly, one after another. However, in the dimension-destroying pagoda, there was no need to worry about being seen or heard by anyone. When Xingtian had now completely grasped Zhuoxiaoduo's limits, he directly pushed Zhuoxiaoduo to the limit, tormenting him endlessly, attacking the precarious line of defense. From the beginning, Zhuoxiaoduo was in this extreme state, and it lasted for an hour. When the time was up, Wen Xingtian immediately stopped without any delay. In such an extreme state, 1 hour a day is enough. I will give you some time to practice the concealed weapon fist step technique, body movement technique, especially the sword technique. Since you want to be a special type of martial artist who can constantly come up with new trump cards, then you also have to put in a lot of effort to practice and sharpen everything before you. Trump cards can't be forced out easily. It's best to keep secrets to yourself and never reveal them to the world. When Xingtian said, since you are talented enough, then do your best to squeeze yourself to the limit. If you turn all the skills you have mastered into your trump cards, Then you will be able to deal with any situation, any situation, any situation. He patted Zhuoxiaoduo's shoulder. Only when you are strong enough, then you are qualified to have trump cards. When you are not strong enough, keeping so-called trump cards will most likely become a dowry for others. You have to understand what I am saying. Zhuoxiaoduo was lying on the floor of the space exterminating tower, panting heavily with his tongue hanging out. He was so tired that his eyes were cross-eyed. His thighs and arms were spasming as if they were not his own. He looked even more miserable and helpless than if he had been raped. When Xingtian smiled faintly and flashed out, he still had to train Li Chenglong. Dealing with 2 people in one day was not a problem for him. Sprinkle some water. Zhuoxiaoduo gasped for breath. After 2 minutes he finally managed to get up from the ground. When Xingtian's words kept replaying in his mind, Zhuoxiaoduo felt that these words were too reasonable. They were words of wisdom. That's right, why do I have to use the hammer as my trump card? All of his methods could be trump cards. Then Zhuoxiaoduo dragged his body that had not yet recovered and began to set up targets for hidden weapons in the space exterminating tower. He was so tired that he could take advantage of this time to do these logistical tasks. It was just right that he could rest while doing it. When his physical strength was almost recovered, he began high-intensity training again. Only in this way could he not waste any time. Small gourds, small flowers, small throwing knives appeared one by one. Different flow speeds, different trajectories, different directions, and different forces. Zhuoxiaoduo exhausted all his energy and practiced the use of hidden weapons for half an hour. Then, while he was recovering, he began to flip through the book on hidden weapons left by He Yuanyue. He tried to figure out the essence of it, absorb the parts that he had absorbed and mastered, and integrate them into his own. In a few days, he would come into contact with the hidden dragon martial arts. Before he came into contact with the neo martial arts, he would try his best to integrate all of these into his own instincts. This would not hinder the progress of the new martial arts. An hour later, he would practice swordsmanship. In the next hour, he began to practice the techniques that his father had taught him in Yin Cat: escape technique, footwork, and body movement. Then, he would practice his martial arts during his leisure time. After half an hour, when his physical strength had recovered to 80 to 90%, he would start hammering. This thing could not be done without sufficient physical strength. In his mind, all kinds of techniques were constantly fusing, and new insights were constantly being generated. Then, he would practice the hidden weapons again, progressing according to the time, one cycle after another. Especially under Wen Xingtian's extreme pressure, Zhuoxiaoduo realized that the insights in his heart were like weeds on fertile land that had just been moistened by heavy rain. Just as the weeds began to emerge on this side, another patch of green appeared on the other side. That night he did not sleep at all. He continued until dawn, until the last bit of insight was practiced by him over and over again. After he had verified it, he left the space of the Tower of Emptiness contentedly. Then to his surprise he realized, my goodness, it's already 5 o'clock. Although he had not slept for the whole night, his spirit was in an extremely excited state. He did not feel sleepy at all. What's more, his own cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. Now he was already at the pinnacle of the innate realm, half a step to the embryonic breathing realm. In his dantian it was filled with pure fiery red vital qi. It was densely packed and was already in a state of saturation. This was the sign of having abundant vital qi, and being able to break through to the embryonic breathing realm at any time. Zhuoxiaoduo tried to use the flaming sun scripture. The moment he thought about it, his dantian was like a boiling pot. With a slight circulation, it was like 10,000 horses galloping and the rising tide of the sea, lasting for a long time. Zua, are you up? Li Chenglong's voice rang out like a broken gong. I'm up. Let's go. Let's go to school. When they reached school, Zhuoxiaoduo went to look for Wen Xingtian before classes started. Teacher 1, is there a special technique that can suppress the agitation of vital qi and limit one's own limits? Zhuoxiaoduo asked tentatively. Wen Xingtian was stunned. You have already reached the stage where you can break through to the embryonic breathing realm? Yes. Zhuoxiaoduo was depressed. Now my dantian is already a little bloated. I'm worried that if I get agitated at some point, I won't be able to suppress the breakthrough. If I really break through accidentally, it will have a huge impact on my future progress. I hope to enter the next big realm when my foundation is at its limit. When Xingtian reached out and touched Swishaoduo's wrist. After checking, he could not help but click his tongue in wonder. He had not reached such a stage last night. How was it that in just one night, this brat seemed to have eaten a treasure of heaven and earth? Tell me what's going on? When Xingtian asked. Last night, when you were sparring with me, you were saying those words. Swishaoduo frowned and said, especially after you left, I calmed down and thought about it bit by bit. In the end, I don't know what happened, but I had a lot of realizations and understandings. I practiced everything that I had learned in the past, and that's how it is now. I really don't have any other encounters. Swishaoduo spread out his hands with a helpless look on his face that deserved a beating. When Xingtian laughed and scolded, look at how smug you are. Although he was lecturing him, his heart was filled with gratification. In the end, Swishaoduo was still inexperienced. He only knew the concept but not the reason. But how could Wen Xingtian not know the significance of a sudden epiphany to a cultivator, and the benefits that came with it? Wen Xingtian admired Swishaoduo's foresight and felt gratified. Young people nowadays were all self-righteous. Few of them really took the words of their teachers and parents to heart. As for those who really practiced it, it was even more rare. Most of them would only have the same realizations when they encountered similar situations. Only then would they really mature and grow up in this aspect. It was the same for ordinary people and martial artists. Although there was a huge difference in strength, in the end they were all human and had the bad habits of human beings. And this was the most troublesome problem for teachers. It was not that they did not understand or did not want to teach, but that they did not want to learn. Or even if they learned it, they would not put it into practice, let alone understand it by analogy and draw inferences from it. This was the most helpless thing. Ordinary people could make mistakes and correct them, but a martial artist's mistake was a different concept from an ordinary person's mistake. This was also the disadvantage of having a strong foundation of strength. Once a martial artist made a mistake, it was rare for him to have another chance to understand in his life. What he lost was his life. In life, how could there be so many chances to start over after making a mistake? These words were even more fitting when applied to martial artists. What was learned on paper was shallow, and what was learned had to be done personally. This sentence was not suitable for martial artists. To martial artists, every powerhouse imparting their experiences to you was a lucky chance. If you were to be respectful and grateful, and if you understood, you would be able to avoid death in the future battlefield. And those who did not know how to respect and fear the strong, did not know how to be grateful, and did not cherish this opportunity. If they died, they died. Even if it was a peerless genius, it was the same. The so-called premature death in the middle of the road was the norm. On the other hand, Swishaoduo was able to calm his heart and ponder over every word he said. Then, he was able to comprehend them. This was a very gratifying thing. Comprehension and comprehension were actually two different things. Realization was beginning to feel something, but it did not touch on how to put it into action. Understanding, on the other hand, was completely understanding and mastering. A special technique to suppress a breakthrough. There really is no such technique. Suppressing the restlessness of the true essence can only be done by oneself. When Xingtian smiled bitterly and said, this matter can only depend on one's perseverance, endurance, strength, talent, and foundation. Speaking of which, if there really is such a technique, then wouldn't the world be full of geniuses? When Xingtian frowned and pondered, in a while, I will impart to you a mental cultivation method of the ice heart jade urn. Every time you suppress the restlessness of the true essence, you can try to use this mental cultivation method. Although this mental cultivation method cannot help you completely suppress your own limits, it can calm your heart and let you enter a tranquil state. Diligently practice this technique. You will benefit for life. Swishaoduo was overjoyed. Thank you, Teacher One. But, in the matter of calming the restlessness of the true essence and restricting a breakthrough, you cannot rely too much on the mental cultivation method of the ice heart jade urn. Suppressing a breakthrough, in the end, it still depends on your own patience, tenacity, and perseverance. When Xingtian said, "Now look inside your dantian and confirm the current state of your yuan qi." Chapter 4:13. Zhou Xiaoduo was a little confused. State. When Xingtian sighed, "The vital qi in your dantian is vaporized? Or is it vaporized? If it is vaporized, to what extent is it? Is it mist? Or is it a pervasive mist? Or is it a thick mist? Or is it a very thick churning mist?" Zhou Xiaoduo frowned and looked inside his dantian. "Right now my primordial qi is in a red state. It is already very, very dense, like a thick fog that is churning like a tide." When Xingtian's facial muscles couldn't help but twitch a little. He just asked casually, but he never expected to get such a result. Generally, when martial arts practitioners practice star vital qi, the vital qi in their dantian was different for every realm. Below the martial arts master level, one could feel the dantian and vital qi, but one couldn't really see it. That feeling was, "I have it, I am very strong, I am very powerful, but I can't see it." This was pure vaporization. At the innate realm, the basic state of the vital qi in one's dantian was a kind of mist. This kind of mist was like the wisps of mist floating in the air in the early morning. It was very faint and visible to the naked eye, but that was it. Most of it was vaporized and only a small part of it was vaporized. This was the normal state of most people in the innate realm. The vital qi that was vaporized was called innate qi. Before the martial arts master broke through to the innate realm, the more times he suppressed his vital qi, the thicker the mist would be when he reached the innate realm. This was different from person to person. For example, when Xingtian himself was also a genius. He suppressed his advancement 7 times when he broke through to the innate realm as a martial arts master. When he reached the later stage of the innate realm, the mist in his dantian was already pervasive and was about to become a thick mist. At the embryonic breathing realm, it would form vital qi clouds. Depending on the number of times he suppressed it, the clouds would be different. Basically, most of it was vaporized and a small part of it was vaporized. In the white mist, there was a condensed cloud. Could be called embryonic breathing. As for how much, it all depended on one's talent and hard work. Above that, in the inner core realm, there would be a small amount of liquefaction of yuan qi. 1 drop of yuan qi could be called core formation in martial arts. However, it was actually just a drop of liquefied yuan qi. It could be called core essence. At this time, a small portion of the vital energy vaporized, most of it turned into mist, a small portion turned into clouds, and an extremely small amount turned into liquefaction. The most obvious characteristic of the soul transformation stage was that there would be a small amount of solidification of vital energy. Similarly, if there was a single drop of solidification, it could be called soul transformation. However, there was a qualitative change in the nascent soul realm. As long as the dantian's origin qi still had a trace of vaporization, it was impossible to break through to the nascent soul realm. And these small amounts, as the cultivator continued to break through their limits in their current realm and later realms, the small amounts would continue to grow, increase in quantity, increase in size, increase in density, increase in purity, and so on. It would depend on how hard one worked. Let's not talk about this for now. As for Huayun in the future, Ka5 digressed. The primordial qi in Zhou Xiaoduo's dantian was in a state of extremely dense fog, and there were even signs of it surging like a tide. And its color? Red. Oh, it was fine if it was red. After all, everyone knew that Zhou Xiaoduo cultivated the Flaming Sun Sutra. It was reasonable for it to have its own characteristics. These 7 students might not have the highest cultivation level, their family backgrounds weren't the best, and their perception and aptitude weren't the most outstanding. But these 7 people had the least number of flaws in their moves and styles. There was nothing wrong with their actions, manners, habits, and way of attacking. Moreover, their martial arts were exceptionally compatible with their bodies. From head to toe, they were the standard teaching material for embryonic breathing realm ancient martial art practitioners. When these 7 people joined forces, their suppression of Zhou Xiaoduo was even sharper than when 10 or 20 people joined forces to attack. However, it was still not enough of a threat to Zhou Xiaoduo. In fact, what Zhou Xiaoduo was doing was like training with Wen Xingtian. He was suppressing his opponent's limits and attacking fiercely. To use an inappropriate analogy, it was like a steel nail that was already standing straight. He only needed to raise a sledgehammer and smash it straight down. Naturally, they would follow the direction of the source of the power and automatically drill to the deepest place. Swishaoduo naturally would not be stingy with such a task. He launched a crazy attack according to his wishes and beat him up fiercely. However, as he beat him up, Swishaoduo slowly felt. Wasn't he now equivalent to an assistant teaching? This Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts School assistant teaching. Did he get a salary? This was time-consuming and energy-consuming. In addition, most of the students in Class 1 were geniuses who had already advanced to the embryonic breathing realm in the secondary martial arts school. There were only 6 people who were still in the innate realm now. These people included Swishaoduo, Li Chenglong, Zhan Piapiao, Yu Yan Pai Bao, and Jia Kuang. In a week's time, the first preliminary test will begin. After school in the afternoon, the 7 students who were picked out by Wen Xingtian had already been drilled to death by Swishaoduo. Wen Xingtian released this notice at the right time. You have already been in the Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts School for 4 days. Under normal circumstances, the first round of the preliminary test for new students will begin in 10 days. Start recording the credits of the first round and the current results. Wen Xingtian said, this time the credits and rewards will also be ranked. The reward for the first place will include a bottle of marrow cleansing pills and 1,000 credits. So, all the way to the top 10 will be rewarded with credits. After the top 10 there will be no reward. Wen Xingtian said, so, you can start preparing now. Normally, the first preliminary test destination is to hunt star beasts. Go to the meteorite plains and hunt star beasts individually. In the end, the winner will be based on quantity and quality, regardless of any moves or attack patterns. As long as it's an individual's method, you can use it. They hunted star beasts on an individual basis. In the end, the winner will be based on quantity and quality, regardless of any moves or attack patterns. As long as it's an individual's method, you can use it. Wen Xingtian put his hands behind his back and walked to and fro in front of the queue. He said calmly, let me tell you, I don't expect you to be able to take the top 10. However, Class 1 is still the first genius class. If even the top 3 get away, I'll skin you when I come back. When the students heard this, they couldn't help but feel disgusted. Why did it sound like Teacher Wen was saying that taking the top 3 was such a simple thing? There's no hurry now. Don't worry. If more than 3 of the top 10 spots are taken by other classes, I'll skin you when I come back. Lastly, it's Swishaoduo. If you don't get the championship, even if the championship falls to other people in our class, I'll still skin you. When it came to it, he actually added another condition for Swishaoduo. It was a heavy condition that was very difficult to fulfill. Swishaoduo couldn't help but look confused. The first 2 conditions were fine. Everyone worked hard together and got punished together. However, why did the last condition become him? And he wanted to directly lock in the championship? Teacher Wen, this is very unfair. However, how could Wen Xingtian talk about fairness and unfairness with him? He waved his hand and said, dismissed. Then he said, Swishaoduo, follow me. Swishaoduo followed Wen Xingtian with a look of nostalgia. He pondered as he walked. Missions and trials are just a piece of cake for me, aren't they? The others are fine. But I can use this wave to accumulate supplies for the Dragon Blood Flying Dagger. Using the Dragon Blood Flying Dagger to help me improve is still the most convenient. The last time so many martial artists fought with him in the snowy night, the Dragon Blood Flying Dagger had made a huge profit. It had been a long time since then, and he didn't have much left after scrimping and saving. On the way to Fenghai, he didn't recharge much, so he only cared about rushing. And this trial was an opportunity. Also, he didn't have a lot of luck points left. Although he hadn't used them, he only had a total of 70 points. Looking at the new round of suppressing the restlessness of his vital essence and self-limiting breakthrough, he would definitely consume a lot of luck points. How could he feel at ease? After coming to the Hidden Dragon High School, Swishaoduo felt that everything was good. The only flaw was that he was dissatisfied. He had tried every means to recommend his fortune-telling ability regardless of the occasion and place, but until now, no one had come to him for fortune-telling. Well, that time with Grandma sure didn't count. Because he didn't know how long it would take for the injustice to be redressed, the luck points would take a long time to come. How could these guys be so calm? Didn't they know that they had missed a great opportunity that fell from the sky for no reason? For people like Zhuo, luck points, cultivation progress, and wealth. Naturally, the more these things he had, the better. Zhuo would feel that he had lost money if he didn't make any progress or increase for a day. Yes, although he didn't lose money after a day, Zhuo felt that he had lost money. Therefore, he had to continue working hard. Chapter 4:14. He followed Wen Xingtian to the teacher's office absent-mindedly. Wen Xingtian took out a book from the drawer and said, "This is the Ice Heart Jade Urn mental cultivation method. Take it back and read it thoroughly. After understanding it carefully, you can start cultivating. Remember to return it to me tomorrow morning." "Okay. Thank you, teacher." "Okay, get lost. I'll go to the villa to continue in 40 minutes. Hurry up and eat." When Xingtian rolled his eyes and waved his hand as if he was shooing away flies. 40 minutes. Hearing this, Zhuo was like a fast horse that had its butt cut by a knife. He immediately rushed out with a whoosh. And so it went on for 3 days. Everything was calm and tranquil. Every day went on as planned. Zhuo, on the other hand, had completed his first self-limitation breakthrough in these 3 days. When he first felt and suppressed the restless real vitality, Zhuo truly felt that he had almost made a mistake and his chi meridians had gone astray. The suppression this time was completely different from when he had suppressed the restless real vitality in the martial master realm. One was heaven and one was earth. At the beginning of the suppression of the innate vital chi, there was an extreme negative reaction. It felt as if 10,000 steel needles had pierced into his dantian. Zhuo widened his eyes and opened his mouth instinctively. He took a few deep breaths and his face contorted. At this moment, he remembered that the process of the innate stage's vital chi compression seemed to be called the thorny road in martial arts. The pain was unimaginable. He also remembered that the compression of the innate stage was rumored to be the most painful part of the cultivation journey. It tested one's endurance and perseverance the most. For someone as strong as Wuxia, suppressing the thorny road 8 times was already the limit of her body, and breaking through the embryonic breathing realm. It was actually so painful. Zhuo took a deep breath. Thinking of this, he actually felt that it wasn't so painful anymore. Nian cat has only suppressed it 8 times. Wahahaha. Zhuo trembled and laughed. "I finally have something to surpass you. Come on." His body trembled as he continued the compression process. However, the feeling of the sharp needles stabbing into his meridians became more and more intense with every inch of compression. As time passed, even his meridians began to feel pain. It was as if ants were gnawing at his meridians, biting and tearing at his meridians bit by bit. When it was compressed halfway, the meridians all over his body were in unbearable pain. It was as if millions of red-hot steel needles were piercing through his meridians. Zhuo bit the corner of his mouth until it bled, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Zhuo did not expect that he had already wanted to give up several times during the first compression of his true essence. There were only 2 things that kept him going. The first was that he wanted to become stronger. Secondly, even Nian cat could persist for 8 times. Even a girl could persevere 8 times, but I couldn't even persevere once. How could this be? How could that be? What a joke. Masters were refused to accept this. Masters would definitely persevere. Zhuo screamed crazily all the way, but he suppressed it and persevered. Fortunately, he was in the space of the Tower of Emptiness at that time. Otherwise, the children within dozens of miles would not dare to cry because of his screams. That was really miserable to the extreme. Finally, Zhuo successfully compressed the primordial chi in his dantian. The primordial chi that originally filled his dantian only occupied 1/3 of the space in his dantian. In fact, the main reason why it was so difficult and miserable was that Zhuo was too careless. He forgot that Qin Fangyang's Wuxiaonian, and even Mu Yanyan had mentioned the thorny road to him more than once. In other words, he did not pay attention to it at all. After all, when a martial master broke through to the primordial realm, he only needed to suppress it. Duo did not expect that the thorny road to the primordial realm would be so painful and miserable. As for Wen Xingtian, Teacher Wen really did not expect this guy to start his first compression of the vital essence so soon. According to Wen Xingtian's estimation, it would take at least 10 days, which was the end of this round of trials, for Duo to reach the point where he had to suppress it. Of course, this was not because Teacher Wen's estimation was too far off, but because he did not know enough about Duo's background. After Duo obtained the Ice Heart Jade Earn Divine skill, he no longer had any scruples and crazily absorbed the spiritual qi. With the help of the top-grade Jade of Astral Souls and the Dragon Blood Flying Dagger, Duo was promoted to the level of spiritual qi explosion in just 2 days. If Wen Xingtian knew about this, he would have told him in advance that the so-called compression of the vital essence was usually a third of the way down. At most, half of the way down was already the limit of the human body. If the vital essence was further compressed, the person involved would have to endure 10 times more pain than before. It was even more dangerous than dancing on the tip of a knife. Once he lost control, the vital essence in his dantian would be reversed and his body would explode. Without any luck, his divine soul would be destroyed and he would be consigned to eternal damnation. That was how dangerous it was. But it was a pity that Duo didn't know anything about it. He only knew that the vital essence in the dantian was compressed. The smaller the volume, the purer the vital essence. He had only compressed it to a third of the way down. It looked like it was far from being fully compressed. How could he surpass Nian Nian at this rate? Since there was still room for improvement, he had to continue. Well, the 1/3 that Wen Xingtian said was different from the 1/3 that Duo said. Wen Xingtian's 1/3 meant that he had suppressed 1/3. But Duo's 1/3 meant that he had already suppressed 1/3. In other words, he had already exceeded Wen Xingtian's safety standard of half. But how would Duo know this standard? Therefore, he continued to compress his vital essence and pressed it down forcefully. Ouch! Duo was trembling all over. His eyes were wide open, and his eyeballs were bulging out of their sockets. He looked up and howled, "It hurts so much. Ouch, 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 ouch." As he howled, he continued to compress. "Keep it down. Keep it up. Ah! Ouch, ouch, ouch." Duo roared. The vital essence was compressed bit by bit under the repeated pressure. Gradually, it surpassed 1/3 and reached about 1/4 of the way down. There was still room for improvement, which meant that it was not enough. Keep compressing. 1/5.17. Duo clenched his teeth and continued. He couldn't even scream now. Under the influence of the extreme pain, he stubbornly tried to understand it like this. If he could suppress 1/3 of it, it meant that he could suppress it 3 more times. 1/4 meant that he could suppress it 4 more times. Even if he suppressed it to 1/10, he would only be able to suppress it twice more than Yen Yen Cat. What was this? A mere 2 times? That's not as good as not much. It could not withstand the pain he was enduring. Since it was already so painful, he might as well go all the way and make it much more painful than Yen Yen Cat. So continue. Puff. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Duo could vaguely feel that his meridians were cracking, as if they could not withstand the pressure and were about to explode. His heart skipped a beat, and he transferred out a drop of luck points. He only used half a drop, and it turned into a cool air that merged into his meridians. Instantly, the feeling disappeared, and his meridians returned to normal. Don't use it if you can. Save it. Duo's heart ached. Although he had used it, it was still half a drop. And looking at the situation, it seemed that he would need a lot of luck points to suppress it all the way. Forget it. Keep compressing. Ow, 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 ow. He suppressed it all the way to 1/17. He saved his luck points and used them at 2.5. It seemed that there was no way to suppress it anymore. At this moment, the vital essence in his dantian had completely stopped at the bottom of his dantian, almost like a pancake. Although it was still a dense fog of vital essence, it had been suppressed by Duo to the point that it was like a solid object. This time he really could not suppress it anymore. Even if he suffered more pain, he could not suppress it anymore. 1/17. It seemed that it was only twice as strong as Nian Nian Cat. It did not seem to be a big deal, right? Zhuo Duo, who was extremely unwilling, frowned as he tried to think of a way. After a while he suddenly had an idea. With a thought, a hammer made of yuan qi was formed in his dantian. He controlled the hammer with his mind and smashed it down on the vital essence pancake at the bottom of his dantian. Could not be compressed? Then I'll smash it down one by one. This was the method that Zhuo Duo came up with from blacksmith Wu's memory of forging and tempering. He had obtained the 100 tempering iron, and it was nothing more than tempering it 1,000 times. If he could not suppress it with force, he would smash it. He did not believe that he could not continue to compress it. One hammer. Boom. Pooh. Zhuo's meridians went against the flow, and a mouthful of blood rushed up and sprayed onto the ceiling. What the fuck? Zhuo Duo hurriedly stopped. He used the Ice Heart Jade Earn mental cultivation method and luck points to suppress his vital essence and repair his meridians. I'm fine. Another hammer. With the Ice Heart Jade Earn mental cultivation method to calm his meridians, luck points to repair his meridians. With every hammer smash, Zhuo's body would convulse in pain. He smashed it again, and again. Zhuo's eyes were bulging, and his mouth was shut. He smashed it down continuously as if he was fighting for his life. In the end, even his meridians were numbed. However, the effect was obvious. His vital essence was smashed into a thin pancake. My current volume is about 1/24 of my dantian's volume? Does this mean that I can compress it to 24 times? Zhuo Duo finally felt that it was enough. Even if it was not enough, he could not smash it anymore. No matter how hard he smashed it, the volume of his vital essence did not change in the slightest. Why don't I do this? Zhuo Duo was actually not satisfied with the current situation. If possible, he wanted to smash it down to 1%. Of course, 1,000th would be more ideal. However, it seemed that there was no such possibility now. Although it's 16 or 17 times more than Yan Mao, it's still not 20 times. Just barely. Zhuo Duo had achieved his goal. He was proud and could not help but feel proud. Chapter 4:15. But when he recalled the description of the thorny path, he still felt a lingering fear. The thorny path was really fucking more painful than the last time. The last few times he reached the limit of his endurance, he ended up wandering around in purgatory. Moreover, there was even a possibility of his body exploding with true essence. He had never heard of such danger before. Wasn't it just pain? Why did it almost explode when it came to him? Something was obviously wrong. After exiting the space of the spatial extermination tower, Zhuo Duo lay on the bed like a puddle of mud. Unable to move for a long time, after a long while, he realized that the surrounding spiritual qi was gathering towards him like a tsunami, especially on his back. The huge middle-grade jade of Astral Soul's mattress that he had placed there earlier was filled with spiritual qi. It was as if it could topple the mountains and overturn the seas, flowing into his meridians through the pores on his back. After all, Zhuo's dantian was now empty. In this place filled with spiritual qi, it was like a vacuum vortex, swallowing the spiritual qi like a whale swallowing the sea and a gobbling up the sea. Good chance. Zhuo Duo maintained his original position and continued to lie down. His hands moved and a pile of jade of astral souls appeared on the bed. He grabbed a few pieces in each hand and circulated the Flaming Sun Sutra with all his might, forcefully absorbing the jade of astral souls in his hands. This process took less than a minute. The 7 or 8 jade of astral souls in his hands had all turned into powder. Even Zhuo Duo himself was shocked by this result. But it didn't matter, he continued. Zhuo Duo frantically absorbed the jade of astral souls. It was daybreak. Zhuo Duo sat up on the bed. There was a thick layer of powder all around him. Even his butt had fallen into the hole. The middle-grade jade of astral souls mattress had turned into powder. And his dantian was still not full. He didn't have enough jade of astral souls on hand. Zhuo Duo greeted Li Chenglong and asked him to apply for leave for him. Then he anxiously rushed to the entrance of the Hidden Dragon High School. Yes, there's a lingerie store nearby. Although he didn't know if Fang Yinhua had bought the other shop, it was impossible to transform it into a coffee shop in such a short time. Even if he was willing to spend a lot of money, It was absolutely impossible. However, Zhou Xiaoduo couldn't wait any longer. Left with no other choice, Master Zhou went to a women's clothing store under the guise of buying clothes for his girlfriend. He bought a set of clothes from the inside out and even bought a bra. She crazily changed her appearance, put on a mask, stuffed 2 mangoes into her mouth, and used her inner power to suck them in. Then she put on a cool spaghetti strap dress, wrapped a soft white scarf around her neck, and used the bone shrinking skill to shorten her body by more than 20 centimeters. She put on a hat, a veil, and sprayed perfume. Then she swayed her hips and walked towards the ladies' lingerie store. She didn't know if it was because her graceful figure was too alluring or something else, but she attracted a lot of attention. He cursed as he walked. Fang Yinhua, that old bastard, had caused him to suffer because of his shop. Looking at the lechers on the side of the road, their eyes were all green. Bah! Pervert! While she despised him in her heart, she twisted even more vigorously. At the same time, she was nervous. If someone found out about this, wouldn't his reputation be ruined? However, he forgot that he was the one who couldn't wait to find Fang Yinhua. He didn't have the time or the mood to wait for Fang Yinhua to find him. Along the way, she swayed her hips gracefully. The fragrance lingered in the air. She had sprayed almost half a bottle of perfume all over her body. It would be strange if she didn't smell good. Her butt is shaking so much. Her breasts are so big. She must be a mascot, right? Is there such a model? It's not easy for the boss either. Seems like this is a big customer. She's in high demand. The boss has to serve her well. I hope our boss can handle it. Zhou Xiaoduo followed Fang Yinhua into the boss's office. Then he sat down on the sofa and started to get angry. Old Fang, look at the trouble you've caused. He returned to his original voice. Fang Yinhua wanted to say, how can you blame me for this? You're the one who suddenly contacted me. I started this business because I wanted to be safe. However, he didn't dare to say this. He kept apologizing. It's my fault, it's my fault. Young master, you've been wronged. He smiled apologetically and carefully. However, when he saw his appearance, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. Ha ha ha. Cough 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 ha. As he laughed, he tried to stop himself by coughing. In the end, he didn't succeed. Instead, he kept burping. Burp. Ha ha burp. Zhou Xiaoduo was so angry that he took out the dragon blood flying dagger and slammed it on the table. However, he still couldn't stop Fang Yinhua from laughing. After a long time, Fang Yinhua finally stopped laughing. Although he still laughed occasionally, it wasn't as serious as before. Young master, what are you doing? High-grade jade of astral souls. How much do you have? Zhou Xiaoduo asked straightforwardly. I have more than 10,000 yuan on hand. Fang Yinhua was puzzled by the supply and demand of the high-grade jade of astral souls. He said, the supply and demand market in Fenghai City is really strange. I didn't notice anything at first. However, young master mentioned the jade of astral souls before, so I investigated it. I unexpectedly found that other things aren't that hard to find. Only the high-grade jade of astral souls is available. Above the high-grade jade of astral souls, as long as there's a small amount of it, many forces will immediately buy it. I've already offered more than 10 times the market price to buy it. However, after so many days, I've only received so little. If it were in another place, there would be a small amount of the top-grade jade of astral souls in the market. However, in Fenghai City, there's no top-grade astral souls jade of astral souls at all. This is really out of place. Out of place? It can't be, right? Fenghai City has hidden dragon high martial arts, the holy land of martial arts. It's not strange that there's a higher demand for the high-grade jade of astral souls. It's normal that there's less of it. Zhou Xiaoduo didn't take it to heart. Fang Yinhua shook his head and said in a deep voice, young master, you know that I've always been cautious. Every time I go to a place, I'll do my best to understand it. Although Fenghai City has a martial arts school like Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts, and the high-grade jade of astral souls is a hot commodity in every city, the current market price is too abnormal. I suspect that someone is selling the high-grade jade of astral souls, short selling and short selling. However, this has nothing to do with us. There are 17,000 high-grade jade of astral souls in this ring. However, there are only 3,500 red yang jade. It should be enough for you to use for a while. Fang Yinhua handed over a ring. Not bad. I'll take it from you this time. Zhou Xiaoduo didn't stand on ceremony and accepted the ring. When Uncle Nan came, he also left a few thousand high-grade jade of astral souls. However, Zhou Xiaoduo wasn't willing to use them. He had been using the middle-grade jade of astral souls for cultivation. Now that Fang Yinhua had replenished his stock and he had a few thousand middle-grade jade of astral souls, he could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Of course, taking and not doing anything was not a long-term solution. Fang Yinhua also needed to give him some benefits. Therefore, Master Zhou sat upright and looked at Fang Yinhua's face for a moment. Old Fang, you've been showing off a lot recently, haven't you? Also, you've been selling the high-grade jade of astral souls. You know too much. I'm afraid that someone has already set their eyes on you. Fang Yinhua nodded. He had to be powerful. In order to get this identity, he had opened 3 shops and spent a lot of money to buy the high-grade jade of astral souls. Fang Yinhua's wealth had already been revealed. It was normal for him to be targeted. However, it's not a big problem. Zhou Xiaoduo reminded, given your cultivation base, you should be able to protect yourself. However, if you don't have to make a move, it's better not to. Just like what you said, problems that can be solved with money are not big problems. However, if you want to make a move, you have to deal with your target quickly and decisively. You must not leave any traces behind. Do you understand? Once you make a mistake, there will be endless trouble in the future. Fang Yinhua said, the best solution is how to completely avoid danger. Spend money to avoid disaster. Zhou Xiaoduo reminded, disguise yourself as a complete coward. If anyone comes to ask for money, as long as you feel that you can't afford to offend them, just give it to them directly. In any case, you're doing business without any capital. As long as you don't reveal your strength, most problems will be easily solved. Brilliant plan. Fang Yinhua slapped his thigh. He liked this method from the bottom of his heart. In terms of acting cowardly, if he said that he was second, no one would dare to say that they were first. Because I'm not acting cowardly. I'm really a coward. She clawed at Zhou Xiaoduo's face with her 10 fingers. Zhou Xiaoduo fled in panic while Xiangbing chased after him. She would not give up until she got what she wanted. How dare you call me an ugly freak? See if I don't kill you. As she chased after him, she suddenly saw Li Chenglong watching the show excitedly from the side. He even shouted, come on, come on. Suddenly, she felt suffocated and turned to rush at Li Chenglong. She clawed at his head with her 10 fingers. Immediately, 10 neat bloody marks appeared on his swollen face. His Excellency was gloriously disfigured in an instant. Li Chenglong couldn't react in time. The moment he understood the situation, he was furious. He pounced on Xiangbing and pressed him to the ground. Then he assumed the Wusong beating the tiger style. He didn't care about anything and just gave him a good beating. The field was in full swing. Then, Li Chenglong and Xiangbing entered the nourishment chamber at the same time. Though, of course, they were not in the same nourishment chamber. That night, after when Xingtian finished training Zhou Xiaoduo, he asked, have you started to suppress your realm? When he saw Zhou Xiaoduo in the morning and saw Zhou Xiaoduo's face, when Xingtian knew that his judgment was wrong. This kid had started to try to compress his vital essence earlier than he expected. Yes, Zhou Xiaoduo said weakly. I didn't expect that compressing vital essence would hurt so much. Hurt? Of course it hurts. It will hurt more and more in the future. If you don't step on the thorny road, how can you call yourself a superior? When Xingtian said lightly, how's the compression? It's okay. Zhou Xiaoduo frowned. It shouldn't be the limit yet, but I really can't compress it by myself. This was Zhou Xiaoduo's sincere thought. There was still space below, but he really could not compress it anymore. How distressing. When Xingtian smiled faintly. Limit? Of course it was not the limit yet. How could someone who had just stepped on the thorny road and tried to compress it for the first time compress it to half or even 1/3? Trying once or twice is nothing. If you can't compress it, just keep compressing it. This is also a painstaking effort. When Xingtian reminded him seriously, don't be afraid of dragging it out. Don't ever relax. You must compress it to your limit, then accumulate it and compress it again. Don't ever be afraid of pain. You have to understand that the more you do it, the stronger you will be in the future. The opportunity for a martial artist to build a strong foundation is actually to build a solid foundation when you are weak. If you find that your foundation is lacking when you are strong in the future, you will never be able to make up for it. When Xingtian taught him sincerely, this concerns your whole life and the ultimate achievement of your cultivation journey. You can't be careless and you can't be afraid of pain. Whether it hurts or not, just think of yourself as an idiot. Won't it be over in the blink of an eye? Zhuo Duo couldn't help but hang his head dejectedly. Since Teacher Wen said so, then his self-limiting breakthrough in compressing his real vitality last night was probably a failure. At least it was not a success. But there was no other way. The first compression had been completed. There was definitely no way to do it again. If he wanted to compress it again, he would have to wait for the second time. I understand, Teacher Wen. Zhuo's expression was very gloomy. Do your best. When Xingtian patted Zhuo's shoulder, and walked out of the Annihilation Tower, he still had to train Li Chenglong. How could he have the time to be poor with Zhuo Duo? Most people would compress for at least 4 to 5 days because of the unbearable pain. This kid was obviously afraid of pain, but there was nothing he could do about it. He could only encourage him not to be afraid. There was nothing else he could do. When he finished compressing it, he would check it again to see how much it had been compressed. He really didn't want to be disappointed too early. If it really didn't work, he would help him suppress it the second time. As for compressing it successfully in one night, when Xingtian chuckled, what kind of fearless desperado could compress it in one night? When Xingtian left, Zhuo Duo began to cultivate again. Fist and leg movements, footwork, escape technique, hidden weapon, sword and hammer. He practiced the same thing twice. Then, he went out exhausted and lay on the bed filled with top-grade Astral Souls jade. He grabbed the top-grade jade with both hands and began to absorb it. The vortex appeared again. Huff 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 huff. After exactly half an hour, Zhuo Duo finally let go. A pile of ashes was thrown on the ground. Looking for monthly votes, recommendation votes, subscriptions. 6 updates. Chapter 417. High grade was indeed high grade. Normally, he could absorb several pieces of mid-grade Astral Souls jade in a minute. He did not expect to only consume 2 pieces of high-grade Astral Souls after half an hour. That was really awesome. He lifted the bed and saw that the top few pieces of high-grade Astral Souls jade had started to change color. They should have been damaged to a certain extent, but not too much. This absorption can be considered to have consumed 3 pieces of high-grade Astral Souls jade. After confirming his cultivation speed, Zhuo Duo continued to lie down and continuously absorbed the celestial essence qi, as if he was thirsting for it. He felt that his dantian was like a balloon that was constantly being filled with air, and it was constantly being filled up. The meridians in his body revolved 9 times. Part of it turned into his own strength and entered his dantian, while the other part turned into waste gas and was expelled from his nose. There was a subtle feeling of inhaling and exhaling. The dantian's capacity gradually climbed to 4/5. In another 3 hours, his entire dantian would be filled. In the morning it would definitely be filled to the brim. Then, he would be able to walk the thorny path for the second time. Or, he might as well ask for a leave of absence today. There was nothing to do at school anyway. Hearing that Li Chenglong had left, Zhuo Duo took out the Void Exterminating Pagoda and placed it on the table. Then he took a large amount of high-grade Astral Souls jade and plunged in. Today, he must complete the second pressure and succeed before dinner. However, if he wanted the second pressure to be a success, he had to at least be more ruthless than the first pressure. Teacher Wen had made it very clear that his pressure was far from enough. I was too careless. I took it too lightly. Zhuo Duo thought silently. I mistakenly thought that I would be satisfied with more than Yan Mao. This is wrong. It is too one-sided. Think about it, even if some people's aptitude is not as good as mine, as long as they are resilient enough, it is not difficult to surpass me. Just like what Teacher Wen said, whether it hurts or not, I will treat myself as an idiot. Won't it be over in a blink of an eye? So I need to work harder. Zhuo Xiaoduo muttered to himself. His eyes were resolute as he made up his mind. He didn't know that the Zhuo Xiaonian had shocked many people when she walked through the thorny road. Since ancient times, there were only a few people who were able to cross the thorny path 8 times. As for those who could reach the final step and walk through the thorny path in the state of 9 suppresses, they were even rarer. This was because the world had always believed that the 9 steps of thorns was the highest limit for humans. It wasn't that no one had ever attempted the 10th pressure, but no one had ever succeeded. There was a senior who had passed the 9th pressure. He continued to work hard and tried the 10th pressure. Then he left a sentence, "It's not that I don't want to, but I really can't." If he continued, he would die. It will explode. This sentence was widely spread. From then on, the 10 pressure brambles road became a forbidden area for Xiuzha. Because 9 was the number of extremes, cultivators naturally believed that this was fate, and also the limit of human beings. However, Zhuo Xiaoduo didn't know about this. He just kept his head down and pressed. This really proved a saying, ignorance is really a kind of happiness. However, this sentence was only limited to Zhuo Xiaoduo. Who else had the luck points to use? Even a peerless genius like Zhuo Xiaonian would have been turned into a pile of fragrant meat if Zhuo Xiaoduo's compression method was used. At 2:00 in the afternoon, Zhuo Xiaoduo adjusted himself to a perfect state and began to walk the thorny path for the 2nd time. This time the compression had just begun, and the pain he felt soared to the level of the last stage of compression yesterday. Ow 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 ow. Even though he had already experienced it once, Zhuo Xiaoduo was still screaming desperately in the space-destroying tower. He was still trying his best to compress his vital essence. The surface of his skin all over his body began to exude drops of faint red sweat. This was a sign that a human's tolerance for pain had reached its limit. However, he just twisted, spasmed, and screamed like this. He persevered step by step. After spending a total of 4 hours, he finally compressed his vital essence to yesterday's position for the 2nd time. It was a slightly higher position, but Teacher Wen said that this is still not enough. Zhuo Xiaoduo still used the same method as before, smashing and pounding with the spirit energy hammer. A little lower. A little lower. I'm not afraid of pain. I'll treat myself as an idiot. Ow ow ow. However, there was no change even after smashing thousands of times. Could it be that this was his limit? Zhuo Xiaoduo lay on the bed, his face full of disappointment. He was so depressed that he couldn't speak while cultivating and absorbing the top-grade jade of astral souls. It seems that there is a gap between me and a real genius. It's not that I'm afraid of pain, but no matter how much I'm not afraid of pain, this is all I can do. I can't go any further. I'm so pitiful. Zhuo Xiaoduo felt sad from the bottom of his heart. Failure. At night, when Xingtian came as usual, he saw Zhuo Xiaoduo's mournful face and couldn't help but feel strange. What's wrong with this bitch today? What's wrong with you? Why are you looking so down? Xingtian frowned and asked with a sidelong glance. I've tried my best, but I can't compress it any further. Zhuo Xiaoduo sighed. You can't compress it even once? Xingtian widened his eyes and asked in disbelief. Yes. Zhuo Xiaoduo lowered his head with a sad expression. His mood was extremely low. He really couldn't compress it even once. That won't do. Xingtian frowned and said angrily, no matter what you say, you have to force it even if you can't compress it. If you can't even compress it once, your future achievements will be limited. Can't you try harder? Didn't I tell you whether it hurts or not? Just think of yourself as an idiot. I've tried again and again, but I really can't compress it. I can hold on no matter how painful it is, but I just can't compress it. What should I do? Zhuo Xiaoduo said helplessly. Xingtian was also anxious and shouted. The main difficulty of the path of thorns is the unbearable pain. If you're not afraid of pain, how can you not be able to compress it? Excuses, they're all excuses. Come and sit in front of me, try your best to compress it, and I'll help you. but there will be side effects. Once you become dependent on it, it will be more difficult to compress the vital essence in the future. Duo murmured, but now I've already suppressed it a little, and my dantian is not full to the point of bursting. When Xingtian frowned, then hurry up and absorb the vital essence. I'll wait here until you're full, and then I'll help you compress it. It won't take much time. When Xingtian was really anxious this time, the peerless genius that he had recognized had no achievements on the path of thorns. This was simply digging his own grave and destroying his own future. If Duo really couldn't walk the path of thorns, Wen Xingtian would only feel that he had failed as a teacher. No, it was failure, and unprecedented failure. I've ruined this genius, I didn't train him well. Of course, Duo also really believed that he hadn't suppressed it well. Every word that Wen Xingtian had said before made Duo feel that he was still far from being qualified. Do you have a high-grade jade of astral souls? Wen Xingtian was a little anxious. At such a critical time, if you rely on low-grade or mid-grade jade, or automatically absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, how long will it take? If you don't have it, I have it here. If you use a high-grade jade of astral souls to directly channel your meridians, it'll be easier for you to follow up. I have it, Duo said hurriedly. If you have it, then hurry up and do it. Stop talking nonsense and start quickly. Wen Xingtian really didn't want to wait any longer. If he delayed any longer, Duo's failed compression might really take shape, and that would be bad. With the help of the high-grade jade of astral souls, once he started to absorb it, it would be like the ocean pouring into the river. It was extremely fast and abundant. That was why there was the saying that the high-grade jade of astral souls was channeling. Seeing how anxious Wen Xingtian was, Duo became more and more anxious. He hurriedly took out the high-grade jade of astral souls, sat down cross-legged, and started to absorb without saying a word. The power of the Flaming Sun Sutra also started to circulate vigorously. The place where Duo was sitting suddenly turned into a yuan-qi whirlpool. Countless amounts of heaven and earth spiritual qi surged and entered Duo's meridians like rivers flowing into the sea. In less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the high-grade jade of astral souls in his hand quickly faded and turned into powder. When Xingtian frowned as he looked at the endless amount of spiritual qi that was surging towards him. He could only feel the astonishing strength of the spiritual qi, and his heart became heavier and heavier. Looking at the way he was cultivating, it was obvious that he had an extremely high innate talent. Furthermore, he had an outstanding body and meridians. Furthermore, he had the blazing sun divine art, which was a top-notch technique. Every aspect was top-notch. Chapter 418. When Xingtian looked at his watch, it was already 10 o'clock in the morning. Duo was still absorbing the top-grade jade of astral souls into powder. When Xingtian snorted, he tilted his head and squinted his eyes. Let's see how much you can absorb. Finally, at 2 o'clock in the morning, Duo had finished absorbing. His dantian was once again filled to the brim. At this moment, Wen Xingtian was already speechless. What the hell, Duo, how big is your dantian? So many top-grade jade of astral souls were absorbed into your dantian. My feet are covered in powder. If you can't compress such a dantian, you'll be angered by everyone. Is it almost done? When Xingtian asked. It's done. Duo sat down cross-legged and felt the spiritual qi in his dantian moving restlessly. He said, more or less, it's still a bit lacking. Right now it's just rolling and churning. It hasn't reached the level of a mountain flood or a sea hurricane. Brat, other things are debatable, but your bragging is really unique. When Xingtian snorted. You're just a mere innate stage Xiao with a dantian. How dare you say such things? Flash flood hurricane. Ha ha ha. I believe you. But you're just bragging. Heta. Start? When Xingtian asked. Do you want another piece? Duo felt his dantian and said. I think it'll be full before the last piece is used up. As he spoke, he took out 2 more pieces and held them in his hands. When Xingtian rolled his eyes. Didn't you say that 1 piece would be enough? Why did you take out 2 more pieces? Are you trying to show off your wealth and that you have more goods than me? Yes, when Xingtian sincerely offered to give Zhou Xiaoduo a piece of top-grade stone of astral souls. After all, in his opinion, a piece of top-grade stone of astral souls could instantly fill up Zhou Xiaoduo's dantian. But the reality was that much. Under Wen Xingtian's gaze, the 2 pieces of top-grade jade of astral souls in Zhou Xiaoduo's hands quickly disintegrated. The color faded, and the outer layer became powder. Layer by layer. It's really good this time. Teacher 1, shall we enter the Tower of Annihilation? The compression process was really painful. I screamed very loudly. It's not good to be outside. It's a little embarrassing. Zhou Xiaoduo said. No need, it's just outside. When Xingtian snorted and came to a conclusion. You little brat, what are you pretending for? This is only your first time compressing your cultivation base's true essence. How could it hurt? What's more, I'm protecting you. You must be afraid of pain. You can't withstand a little pain, so you can't continue on the thorny path. You're actually afraid of embarrassing yourself? I'll let you embarrass yourself big time this time. All right then. Zhou Xiaoduo's face turned bitter. He told himself in his heart, don't scream. Don't scream. Don't scream. It'll be embarrassing if I scream. Let's start. When Xingtian said lightly, call me when you can't compress it anymore. Got it. Zhou Xiaoduo took a deep breath. He started to compress while running the ice heart jade urn. The initial stage was the same as before. There was no difficulty at all. However, in the 3rd round of suppression, the moment he compressed half of his true yuan, a piercing pain assaulted him. Zhou Xiaoduo's entire body trembled. However, he was mentally prepared and endured the pain. I'll endure it. I won't make a sound. If I cry out at this time, it'll be too embarrassing. No matter what, I have to wait a little longer. Teacher 1 is right beside me. He continued to compress it bit by bit. The process felt a little familiar, but after a while, all the meridians in his body began to hurt. And it was getting more and more painful. It didn't increase, but it increased by multiple times. Finally, when it was close to 1/3, Zhou Xiaoduo finally couldn't help but start to groan. He forced himself to endure, but he still groaned. The groaning continued. When Xingtian's face immediately revealed a look of dissatisfaction. According to the calculation of time, the current point in the process of compressing vital essence for an average person would only be compressed by 1/10. Zhou Xiaoduo had actually started to grumble. It seemed that this kid was good at everything except his perseverance. Sure enough, there was no perfect genius. A cultivator with insufficient perseverance would have a worrying future. When the compression of the vital essence reached 1/3 again, Zhou Xiaoduo only felt that his internal organs were burning, and his whole body was exploding with pain. Even his brain felt as if there were thousands of red-hot steel needles stabbing fiercely. He couldn't bear it anymore. Ow, 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 ow. After this shout, Zhou Xiaoduo's whole body was sweating profusely. His eyes bulged and he couldn't stop groaning. It was as if he was being tortured, and he was using the sound of his voice to reduce the pain his body was enduring. His voice was shockingly loud, and it immediately caused the surrounding hundreds of miles to fall into an ear-piercing atmosphere. The cadence pierced the clouds and split the sky. When Xingtian's face was distorted, and he shook his hand to create a soundproof barrier. This evil creature, do you have to scream so hard? If you have the strength to scream, don't you know that you should use it to compress your vital essence? When you're done compressing, see how I'll deal with you. The people outside couldn't hear it, but when Xingtian, who was close to him, could still hear it clearly. The sound was like a demon's voice pouring into one's brain. It was incessant, sharp, ear-piercing, and extremely miserable. When Xingtian was speechless, he operated his vital energy, and his 2 ears suddenly stuck to his ear holes. He stuck to them tightly, blocking out the demon's voice as much as possible. It was so embarrassing. The first compression was already so earth-shattering, and he couldn't suppress it. What was he going to do in the future? When Xingtian's heart was full of melancholy, he also felt a little disappointed. You're a person who has seen the wind and the waves. Why can't you even endure this little pain? However, Zhou Xiaoduo's voice became more and more miserable. and it sounded more and more like he was on the verge of death, and it lasted for a full hour. Zhuoxiaoduo was sweating profusely. His face was as pale as a corpse, and the sweat on his hair flowed down. Finally, he said weakly, I can only suppress it to this extent. I can't suppress it anymore, not even once. When Xingtian stretched out his hand and said lightly, then don't move. You just need to maintain the current level of suppression. I'll help you suppress it further in the future. Also, try to endure it as much as possible. It'll be more painful later. Zhuoxiaoduo gritted his teeth and said, understood. When Xingtian closed his eyes and spread out his divine sense, a tide of vital energy rushed out from his fingers, like mercury flowing to the ground, and poured into Zhuoxiaoduo's meridians. However, to Wen Xingtian's surprise, Zhuoxiaoduo's meridians were empty, and there wasn't the slightest bit of spiritual energy left. His control over his meridians is still very good. Wen Xingtian felt a little satisfied in his heart. He acutely felt the spaciousness, smoothness and flexibility of Zhuoxiaoduo's meridians. Wen Xingtian felt more and more that this student must be taught a strict lesson. With such good conditions, he couldn't suppress it. Obviously, he didn't have enough willpower. He couldn't endure even a little bit of pain, but he didn't get beaten up enough. All excuses. I made you afraid of pain. From now on, I'll beat you 18 times a day. Because he was helping Zhuoxiaoduo suppress it, when Xingtian continued to inject his own yuan qi into Zhuoxiaoduo's meridians, but the flow was very slow. When his yuan qi had completely filled Zhuoxiaoduo's meridians, there were no gaps then. Dense vital energy entered his dantian, and then the vital energy turned into an iron tower to suppress it. Teacher Wen's plan was to suppress his dantian to 1/3 of its capacity in one go. In this way, the vital energy slowly moved forward, circled around his body, and gradually approached his dantian. When Xingtian stopped and tried to let more vital energy enter to ensure that nothing went wrong, it had to be said that when Xingtian's control of his vital energy was really high, it was like he was very familiar with it, and it flowed like he was using his own arm. It should be known that his vital energy was overflowing from the outside into another person's meridians, and the other person's meridians were only at the innate stage. With Wen Xingtian's real cultivation level, any mistake in breathing could cause Zhuoxiaoduo's body to explode and turn into powder. In fact, this was another main reason why 99% of high-level practitioners didn't dare to help low-level practitioners suppress their vital energy. Once there was a slight mistake in the control, it would directly kill the person. When Xingtian confirmed that his vital energy was full and overflowing Zhuoxiaoduo's meridians, and there were no gaps, and then suddenly he rushed into his dantian and wanted to finish it in one go. But, the situation of his dantian was not right. Why did it look empty? There was no movement from Zhuoxiaoduo's side. Obviously, he had handed himself over to Teacher Wen, and let Teacher Wen do whatever he wanted with him. Do whatever you want, it's just a little more than 50 kilograms. When Xingtian didn't dare to be negligent, he continued to control his vital energy all the way down, and in the process of falling it turned into a huge flat surface. However, his dantian was more than half full, and he still didn't feel the expected obstruction. This kid's self-completion rate is more than half? This result is comparable to the ordinary practitioners who set foot on the thorny road. His shouting was not in vain. Not bad, not bad. When Xingtian was a little relieved. However, it was one thing to be relieved, and he had to continue. After a while, when Xingtian's vital energy had spread to 2/3 of his dantian according to the knowledge of practitioners, or at least when Xingtian's knowledge, this was already the limit. Why did he still feel empty? Where was Zhuoxiaoduo's vital energy? When Xingtian was inexplicably surprised. Did this kid suppress more than 1/3 of his vital energy? Why did he say that he didn't succeed? Looking at his expression, he didn't seem to be lying at all. When Xingtian, who wanted to find out, urged his vital energy to continue to suppress, the current level of compression had already exceeded the limit of a genius martial artist. Why didn't he reach it? Or did he feel nothing? If when Xingtian opened his eyes at this moment, he would definitely see two words in his eyes. His left eye was a capital word, stupid, and his right eye was a capital word, stupid. What was going on? He didn't feel anything even after exceeding the limit? Such a wide dantian. How could it reach 1/4? No, it was only 1/5 and he still didn't feel any obstruction? Continued, he finally felt it. He finally touched it, eh. Chapter 419. He finally reached the bottom. He came into contact with the bottom layer of Zhuoxiaoduo's meridian stud, however. When Xingtian was completely dumbfounded. He was completely stunned. Was it directly pressed down to 1/20th? Or how much? To think that there was only a thin layer at the bottom left? How could it be pressed down to this point? And this kid actually did not explode? He was actually complaining about the failure of the suppression. For a moment, when Xingtian actually felt that he had no emotions in his heart. Yes, he did not know what emotions he should have. He was completely at a loss. And what the fuck, is this still fog? However, it did not seem to have reached the point of turning into clouds. It was still fog, but how could it be suppressed to this extent? When Xingtian maintained his vitality in Zhuoxiaoduo's dantian and asked, "You told me that you can't press down to this point. Is this what you mean?" As he spoke, he used his own vitality to press down. Yes, it really could not be pressed down. Even he could not move it. This was because Zhuoxiaoduo did not feel anything at all. It did not hurt at all. Of course, there was no compression wave. Yes, it's pressed down to this point. It can't be pressed any further. Haha. Teacher Wen, why don't you use more strength? It's so itchy that I want to fart. Zhuoxiaoduo could not help but laugh. When Xingtian was still in a daze as he withdrew his vitality. He looked at Zhuoxiaoduo, his cheeks trembling slightly. You want to fart? Fucking fart. When Xingtian sat cross-legged and meditated, circulating his energy. He forcefully closed his eyeballs, which were almost popping out, and controlled them in his eye sockets. He tried hard to calm down the turbulent waves in his heart. Probing a student's meridians almost made him lose his mind and go crazy. You can't fucking suppress it? Can't suppress it? Yes, it really can't be suppressed. It can't be suppressed. You're depressed. Because of this? When Xingtian widened his eyes and looked at Zhuoxiaoduo. You mean, you can't press down to this point? Yeah, Zhuoxiaoduo said dejectedly. Tell me, how did you do it? When Xingtian was still in disbelief. You fucking squashed it into a pancake, and it's the kind of pancake that has been sitting there for a few days. How can you squash it? If he placed one bet, would it be equivalent to others placing 8 bets? When Xingtian's tone actually carried a hint of asking for advice. It was simply unimaginable. How else could I suppress my Jinyuan? I just suppressed it as hard as I could. However, at the final stage the pain was one thing. But I really couldn't suppress it. So I came up with an idea. I made a hammer in my dantian with spiritual qi. Then, starting from the side, I hammered it down one by one. What's that saying again? Well, after 1,000 hammers, 100 hammers, a single piece of steel. Zhuoxiaoduo explained his method and then asked nervously, Teacher Wen, the next suppression. How should I suppress it? Shda. When Xingtian touched his chin and lowered his head as if he was deep in thought. However, he was thinking that he must not let Zhuoxiaoduo see the expression in his eyes. Then he took out a cup of water from his space ring, unscrewed it and drank a mouthful of water. Suddenly, cough cough cough, when Xingtian coughed violently, an impulse to kill someone rose in his heart. He had never seen such a pretentious person. I really want to beat him to death. But I also want to kiss him to death. When Xingtian clearly knew that Zhuoxiaoduo really thought that he couldn't suppress it anymore. It was because he hadn't reached the standard. There was no doubt about that. Zhuoxiaoduo really wasn't showing off in front of him. But who set this guy's standard so high? Who was it? Do you dare to stand out? I'll definitely beat you to death. When he raised his head again, when Xingtian's eyes had regained their calmness and depth, he looked at Zhuoxiaoduo and asked, Who told you to suppress it this way? Zhuoxiaoduo looked confused. Teacher Qin Fangyang told me that. Back then, when the martial arts masters were suppressing their realms, Teacher Qin also said that. I was advancing at a faster speed and didn't know the key point. Originally I was about to break through, Fortunately, Teacher Qin interrupted me in time and asked me to suppress it as much as possible. He told me to do my best and use all means to suppress it. When Xingtian thought to himself, this Teacher Qin is indeed a legendary figure. Awesome. Zhuo Duo said. My sister also said that. At that time I was suppressing the martial arts master to break through to the innate realm, and she was suppressing the embryonic breathing realm. She also said that. Back then Zhuo Xiaonian had said, use all your strength to suppress it. The lower the suppression the better. The more times the better. When Xingtian frowned and said, that's it? But, smash it with a hammer? What do you think? When Xingtian thought about it and broke out in a cold sweat. Such an extreme method, if it wasn't for Zhuo Xiaoduo's deep foundation, the tenacity of his meridians, and the spaciousness of his superhuman. No. Even so, it should have exploded a few times already. Since ancient times, who dared to use a hammer in their own dantian? Bullshit about being tempered and tempered into steel. That was simply thinking that one was dying too slowly. There was a good comparison. Practicing the saber in one's own brain. But this guy just waved a big hammer and smashed it wildly in his dantian, creating such a miracle. When Xingtian couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he racked his brains. Because a person's meridians and dantian definitely couldn't withstand it. No matter what, it couldn't withstand it. But there was a living example in front of him that could withstand it. This made the experienced and knowledgeable when Xingtian a little confused. He felt that his worldview was slowly collapsing. The idea of using a hammer to smash it was my own idea. But I couldn't suppress it in the end. Zhuo Xiaoduo felt a little wronged. He said, when it was about 1/10 of the way down it couldn't be pressed anymore. But its essence is still in the form of mist. How could it not be pressed down? Previously, by chance, I once saw a senior craftsman who was extremely skilled in forging. He forged steel and refined gold. I really couldn't do anything, so I made a hammer myself and smashed it randomly. But after smashing for so long, this is the only effect. Sigh. Mist is still mist. It didn't turn into clouds, nor did it turn into liquid. Zhuo Xiaoduo was quite dissatisfied with his current progress. Why can't you climb to the top? If you could smash it into a solid state now, how good would that be? This is the only effect. When Xingtian murmured, the word only is used very well. Just by looking at this, when Xingtian was already sure that this kid was suppressing to this extent. In the whole continent. Well, perhaps since the beginning of the world there had never been such a thing. Unprecedented, the first in the world. Perhaps there might not be anyone who could surpass it in the future. This is the first time I set foot on the thorny road, and I'm already suppressed to this extent. When Xingtian murmured to himself, he was already absent-minded. In fact, when Xingtian's thoughts were still floating in the air, constantly exploding. The first time, Zhuo Xiaoduo was stunned. When Xingtian frowned, what's wrong? This isn't the first time. Zhuo Xiaoduo said, Teacher 1, I've told you before that I can't suppress it, and I can't move forward. Today this is already the third time. Cough cough cough. When Xingtian's soul was directly shaken back into his body, his eyes suddenly bulged. The third time. When Xingtian felt that today was the most unstable day of his life. It was destroyed one after another. Yes, this is the third time. Zhuo Xiaoduo was uneasy. He said, at this rate, I'm afraid I can only suppress it 20 times at most. Isn't this a little too little? Isn't this a little too little? When Xingtian murmured this sentence, almost spitting out a mouthful of blood, can only suppress it 20 times? Can only? These two words were really well used. Isn't this a little too little? This sentence was really fucking well said. Do you know that your 1 time is equivalent to 7 or 8 times of others, dear? Your 20 times is equivalent to 200 times of others, dear. Actually, can already be considered passable, I guess. After holding it in for a long time, when Xingtian finally squeezed out this sentence, he felt that the 3 words passable were also very well said. It had to be said that the master and disciple were both good at Chinese. Passable? Really? Zhuo Xiaoduo said humbly, Teacher 1, can you explain it to me in detail? Seeing that this kid's expression suddenly eased and he seemed to be relieved, When Xingtian only felt powerless to complain. He lowered his eyebrows and said lightly, "Well, with your current level of true origin compression, you can still be considered as a genius. Well, it's not good enough, but it's good enough. I know you've done your best. Basically, this is still okay. Just do it like this in the future. I won't interfere. After all, my help is external. Using external help to help the seedlings grow is not good for your future. This principle. You understand, right?" When Xingtian coughed and said, Yes, I understand," Duo breathed a sigh of relief. Previously, when he couldn't suppress it, he was really scared. It seems that my potential is just like this. At this moment, when he heard Wen Xingtian's words, he finally felt relieved. How many times did you suppress it when you were breaking through from the martial master realm to the innate realm? When Xingtian was suddenly very curious about this question. It's definitely more than this. Duo sighed. I don't remember very clearly at that time. It should be about 30 times. But at that time I was just in a state where I couldn't control it. Although I felt pain, it was not as painful as now. It was really painful. About 30 times. When Xingtian stood up shakily. He only felt that his brain was swaying like a pool of water. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. His brain was filled with the sound of the tide. If possible, continue this state of suppression. When Xingtian stood with his hands behind his back. He tried to maintain a calm expression on his face and said in a casual tone, "When I heard you say that you couldn't suppress it, I thought something was wrong. Now it seems that you're asking too much of yourself. Basically, this is okay. You should know that there is a limit to a person's strength. When you reach your limit, you've reached your limit." You're tuning into the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.